Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I am Ryan Eastman, and here tonight we have the first round of the FBA Draft for the 2020 season. We are here in beautiful Las Vegas, and joining me tonight is my usual partner in crime, Marcus Baylor, and also joining us in the booth is Will Walker. Will, how are you doing tonight?
I'm great. Thank you for having me. I'm ready to talk about all things draft. I've got my coffee alongside me, and I'm so hyped.
Marcus, how about you?
I'm very, very excited, and I'm expecting a lot of craziness to happen tonight. As you already know, this is the time when we get to see some of the newer generation come in and really make an impact for these teams. This is where they finally find their first home in their careers. This could be a start of somebody who can possibly be a future legend, and it's very exciting for all fronts.
Yeah, long show ahead of us. I think last year it took about 3 hours to get through 24 picks. I think I see Hugo Livingston heading to the stage now, our commissioner. He will start the proceedings here tonight with a bit of information for all the fans, players, and teams tuning in.
Let's listen in.
Good evening, draft prospects, family and friends, FBA team staff, players and administrators, as well as all of those who are watching at home. My name is Hugo Livingston III, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to the 2020 Furry Basketball Association Draft. The Furry Basketball Association has a long-standing tradition of helping to develop up-and-coming talented athletes into young, upstanding basketball players. We are excited to see what this new draft class has to offer to the league. Before we begin, I would like to tell you all a story. Once, when I was a young boy, I had a dream. And that dream was... Alright, friends, as the elephant drones on and on in what I am sure is an awe-inspiring story, I, Rookie, have a couple of quick announcements for you. As of about 3 minutes ago, the draft has gone live. If in that time that you have emailed myself or Faded, I can assure you that we have not received that email. If you have any last-minute trades that occur before or during the draft and haven't gotten an email back from us saying that we've received these, please private message me directly. You can do that on Discord. Also, if you have any new deals in the works, PM me directly. You can do that on Discord. When it's your turn to pick your player, you can PM me directly. Are you sensing a pattern here? Basically, I will be the point of contact for your draft day picks and shenanigans as we get started. If we don't hear from you, I will poke you directly after 2 minutes. And if after 4 minutes we don't get a response, I will look to your selected draft priority sheets. If you haven't put one in, well, we'll just select the next highest ranked individual on the board. If a trade occurs which affects the current draft pick, once it's been announced, we will reset the clock for the current new team. That's a lot of information. Got it? Good. So we will now return to your regularly scheduled draft, already in progress. And that's how I became the sole heir to the second largest peanut factory in the world. In short, work hard, play hard, and you can achieve your dreams. It is without further ado that I am pleased to announce that the Texas Lone Stars are on the clock. The Edmonton Totems are on deck, and finally, good luck to you all tonight.
Well, I wonder how many the crowd fell asleep during that nice little story
I
that we got told there. Um,
yeah.
well, let's wake everyone back up. First overall pick. Let's talk about Texas. Marcus and I kind of went through our mock draft, but I want to hear from you, Walker, what your thoughts are here at number one.
Yeah, I've been puzzling over this all day. As we know, the Texas Lone Stars didn't have a fantastic year. That's kind of why they're here, first pick of this year's draft. And I think this is also a unique draft in that there are several different players that could go at the number one spot. And I know you guys discussed this at length, but came to an agreement that perhaps they'd be looking for basically whoever the best available player was. I think maybe you can remind me, but it was Birdie Lavoy Williams
Yes,
Williams.
yes, it
Yeah,
was. It was
so
Birdie that we decided.
Even
and
though
I,
Cooper is ranked number 1.
yes, and I actually am going to break from both of you and say that I do think Cooper has a good chance. I've been watching his play over the last week, of course, the combine uh, with that, and really, I just think for what Texas needs in terms of basically anybody that can become a premier shooter for their team. Alongside Marcus Knight, they need to get him some help, and I think Cooper would be the fantastic choice there. Um, what are your thoughts on him? I guess.
I mean,
Uh,
we both agreed that he should be a top 3 pick. I think we both had him going Edmonton number 2. Uh, my kind of thought was we were still waiting to see what Texas was going to do with bringing back Dennis Summers or not, and we really haven't
Right.
heard much on that front. It's mostly just been Alaska that was pursuing him, and then with the trade that was announced, that kind of eliminated that option. So now I wonder what Texas is thinking if they could bring back Summers maybe at a bit of a discount after watching him not go to Alaska.
Yeah, and even with that case, trying to fit in that entire situation with Dennis and Marcus, putting in Cooper would be very interesting. I will have the question about the possible defense since it's going to be more so small a ball in a way when it comes to that kind of decision, having to put possibly Cooper at the 3 more so than the 2, since that's obviously being filled. It's going to be very interesting to see what they do with this.
Yeah, and
It is
actually,
true.
go ahead if
Go
you want
ahead.
to cut in.
No, you're fine.
Well, I was about to say, I think I see Livingston shuffling to the stage, but I haven't heard any word that the pick is in yet, though.
Interesting.
Hello, we've got a couple of announcements to make here as we are waiting for the first pick. First off, the Tallahassee Typhoons have agreed to trade Travis Buckner and Darian Baptiste to the Huntsville Mayors. In exchange, Huntsville signs and trades Dylan Redfield at a 3-year, $39 million contract, and also sends D'Angelo McQuilkin and $2 million worth of cap space for the 2020-2021 year to the Tallahassee Typhoons. We have another announcement here as well. The Las Vegas Wildcards have agreed to sign and trade Lisa DuPont for $76 million to the Baltimore Spirits for a sign and trade with Roger Umechi, valued at $48 million, and Baltimore's second-round draft pick for 2021. That's it for now. As soon as we have the pick in, I will return very shortly.
Wow.
Well,
Whoa!
I'm just glad none of those involved the number 1 overall pick. I would have been kind of scared who would have moved up to number 1 here last second, but I mean,
There's so much money involved.
yes, more than we'll ever make. I guess the question is, we'll get to those players because obviously Baltimore at number 4, I think we can approach them once we get there, and Tallahassee at number 3, we can do the same because that really changes our boards. But I
Right.
do think I see the commissioner getting handed a card by an intern to stop him from coming all the way off stage.
And he's walking back and forth a lot today already.
Yes, hello. For the very first pick of the 2020 FBA Draft, the Texas Lone Stars have selected Bertie Lavoy Williams, a forward guard gray kangaroo from Claiborne University. Congratulations to you, Bertie, on being the number 1 pick of the 2020 FBA Draft. I shall return for the next pick when Edmonton have confirmed their selection. Tallahassee is on deck. Thank you.
Well, Marcus, it looks like you and I were right for once.
Right. It
Very
looks like
rare.
one of the rare moments that we expected, but I'm not too surprised about this one with the fact that Texas really needed to find an answer with the small forward position. They have been on search for that key spot for years, it seems like. So I think that they have an opportunity to go ahead and sign in Summers as well, and it wouldn't be as much of an issue.
I was going to say that after reviewing Texas's, I guess, current offers, it would make sense that they've looked for a forward in this first pick. So I kind of had to reanalyze whether it meant Zach Cooper would go first or one of the forwards, one of these top 6 forwards that we have, would get this pick. So you guys were right. I was wrong. That's going to
It
be a
happens to the
very
best of us.
common thing.
Oh no,
going
trust
on
me,
today.
we don't we expect our draft boards to just be tossed out the window by
Oh, yeah.
pick 3.
Well, it
As
is going to be by pick 3 because we just saw a massive trade. But on to
Yep.
Edmonton, the team that kind of has redone everything, it looks like, by getting rid of their point guard and center. I kind of want to hear your thoughts, Walker, on what you might think they do here.
Well, I know for a while they were looking for a starter shooting guard, and based on their record, in terms of what they've had sent out, they're trying to still get Derek Kim to come to Edmonton. They've got a pretty good offer right now on the board to cover that. But if that kind of falls through, they could go here with this pick one of the very many shooting guards that we have available. Again, I'm going to mention Cooper, but we haven't talked about Saphira Kelly at all today. And if they decide to go for a point guard, we can discuss some players like Callum Williamson, who could be picked here as well. I think each of them have their strengths and weaknesses. We can elaborate on that. But there is a slew of ideas that I think Edmonton, or things that Edmonton could improve on. I don't think they would be going for a center at all. So that's kind of my 2 cents.
I was about to say I wouldn't be surprised if they went for Coquino's, just the fact that he is the top-rated center, and I feel like centers are always a rare commodity. You almost have to kind of reach for them sometimes. But Marcus, what are you thinking here?
Well, it's going to be very interesting, as you did allude to, with Kim being offered a really good sum from the rumors that we've heard so far.
Right.
But I think that really it wouldn't hurt to really go for possibly a swing for here, which is why I think that going for Cooper is the best case scenario, because he is a swing for and he's able to have that kind of opportunity to do that. I will say, alluding to the point guard situation, since they already brought in Kajani, it's going to be interesting to see how they're going to put him in this role. They've really been focusing on the guards heavily this offseason. So I wouldn't be too surprised if they decide to go big here with Andreas, because of the fact that they are being so focused on the guards in all aspects. But we'll have to just wait and see.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that you're wrong, obviously.
But Walker's saying he's right.
Well, let's look at the facts. I'm 0 for 1 so far. So, the idea is that in this particular draft, I don't think it's come through necessarily in our commentary yet. There are a lot of good guards available this year, and the forwards are slim pickings, and the centers are even. We'll get to them later on, possibly in this round. But towards the top here, a lot of the highest rated players are guards. That tends to be a natural conclusion in most draft years. But if you're looking for a forward or center, you have to kind of search down the board a little bit. And Kokinos has been one that we've talked about just now as being a potential draft pick here. So I'm not saying that won't happen. I just think a swing for position, I would have to agree that for Edmonton, that might be their best choice right now.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I definitely don't disagree. Obviously, I went with Cooper on my draft board, but that was definitely based on the motion that was kind of before they were going after Kim, because I kind of figured Kajani would be the starting point guard, and potentially a swing forward come in. Now I wonder maybe they're going to go with a Derek Kim Kajani lineup, and they already have a Beaver playing small forward, so perhaps they decide to go elsewhere here. And I actually do think I see some movement. The pick is in.
All right.
For the number 2 pick of the 2020 FBA Draft, the Edmonton Totems select Zach Cooper, a guard forward Beaver from Templeton University. Congratulations to you, Zach, on being the number 2 pick of the 2020 FBA Draft. I shall return when the Tallahassee Typhoons have confirmed their selection. Baltimore Spirits, you are on deck. Thank you.
Okay, Marcus, we have to stop the draft. We're 2 for 2.
Wow. I'm actually a little bit surprised here, considering the fact that they're being very guard heavy within this. It could be a possibility that they're trying to have some insurance in case Kim decides not to go with Edmonton here, but it's still a little bit of a shock. But it's obviously the best player available, being number 1, and it's going to be interesting to see how they go from here.
Yes.
I think Cooper would have been picked up at number 3 had Edmonton not picked him up, and perhaps it was one of those cases where management saw that and said, but for the sake of the conversation, we have quite a bit going on in the next couple of picks to discuss. I was not tending to dwell on it, but the trade here makes a lot of what we were going to talk about with the next pick, the Tallahassee Typhoons, really kind of be thrown in the trash. And I like trash, but not too much trash.
Very much so. I think both Marcus and I had a swing for going here to Tallahassee at number 3, but now that they've picked up both Redfield...
It's Darian Baptiste and Redfield, yes.
No, Darian Baptiste got traded to Huntsville.
I'm sorry, I got that.
D'Angelo McCulkin
Yes.
and
Big
Dylan Redfield are
iron.
joining Tallahassee, which takes care of both the guard and the small forward position. So I now am throwing Kokinos up to number 3 on my board because their need is now there. I mean, I could maybe argue Safira here because I personally don't prefer Redmayne at point guard. I think he's he plays better off the ball, but he has done well enough as a point guard that perhaps it's better to address the big for position now that they got rid of Baptiste.
Yeah, it's going to be real interesting what they decide to do here. I do think that Kokinos might be the player to be picked here. It's really either between Kokinos or Kelly at this rate, because as you alluded to, Redmayne is more of the shooting guard favorite type of player, even though he is on the smaller side.
Redfield?
Not Redfield. Oh, excuse me. Sorry about that. But yeah, I think that
McCulkin is
DQ.
a shooting
McCulkin, like DA, being
He
more
does
of
have a red mane.
Yeah, but when it comes to DA being the main shooting guard here, it's going to be interesting what they have to do with this bunch. And it's actually really surprising to me that they decided to make this move.
It is a little surprising for me. Walker, what are your thoughts on it?
Well, I think, all things aside, there's always a lot of room for improvement and movement in this league. And we've seen that now with some shakeups of the Tallahassee management lineup. We've seen when that happens tends to be that these big name players end up either wanting a better contract than they have already, or their demands change. And certainly that will come through in trades. Now, I don't know how much we can speculate on why Dylan Redfield and D'Angelo McQuilkin have been grouped together in this trade to Tallahassee. One coming off a really short free agency, a very short contract with Huntsville. The other being, of course, one of their star players for so many years. So it's quite interesting. But I will give it this. I agree that at this point in time, it would indicate that they need to fill the number 5 role on their starting roster. And the best potential person to do that in this top 10 would be Kokinos.
Yeah, and I mean, I could understand the thought process that maybe McCulkin, they're not sure if he's going to be able to start right away. I mean, I feel like Huntsville decided to make the move because of the off-season Olympic issues. However, at the same time, they picked up Fash last year in the draft, and she performed very well. So perhaps that was all they really needed to say, okay, can we really afford to keep Fash next season plus go after McCulkin again as kind of a sixth for a role? And I think they realized that no, that probably wasn't going to work out in their favor long term. But
And McQuilkin wants to start too.
He
Been
does.
very adamant about that.
Well, and that's kind of the other thing is, do you want to deal with that potentially next offseason when he says, okay, it's me or the second-year player? But at least with Tallahassee, with their current roster, he does have a path to start.
Also makes things kind of interesting too in regards to who they end up starting with at point guard, because Jose Caristados is now up for free agency, the Typhoons.
Yes, that's actually something I think I brought up with the mock draft, that I felt like I considered whether or not they'd go after Safira here, but
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about Safira Kelly. I think she's been proven to be definitely a top 5 pick this year, and she proves that through her excellent jump ability, her agile play on the court, but doesn't necessarily give a lot of faith to any closer mid-range scoring. She's definitely a 3-point shooter, preferably offensive running, that will use that to her ability, but at the cost of maybe being a little bit more of a defensive player. And I'm just wondering what your opinions are on her play versus maybe another point guard like Callum Williamson. Marcus.
Well, I will have to say that it's because of the fact that she is simply an offensive juggernaut. She is a shooting first point guard, which is, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just trying to be able to find that right fit who would be willing to be like, all right, we're ready to let this person be the main drive when it comes to our scoring offensively. And while it would be interesting to see how they would be able to fit in certain teams, I do agree that she is certainly worth a top 5 pick. That is for sure. But the question really is there anybody on the top 5 that you can confidently say that they are looking for a point guard at this point? Because as we alluded to, Tallahassee has Redmayne, Baltimore now has Lisa, and I believe Albany has. I have to check Albany real quick to make sure that they do have a starting point guard, but that might be like the spot where she might end up being landing.
yeah. Well, speaking of, it looks like I see the commissioner heading to the stage now with the pick.
For the number 3 pick of the 2020 FBA Draft, the Tallahassee Typhoons have selected Adge Martin, a guard forward from Hellion University. Congratulations to you, Adge, on being the number 3 pick for the 2020 FBA Draft. I will return for the next pick when the Baltimore Spirits have confirmed their selection. After that shall be the Albany Alphas. Thank you.
Well. I somehow still was right in the end.
No, God.
Actually, wait, did I say Inari here, or did you say Adge?
You said Inari.
Oh,
said
no,
Adge.
you're right. You're
No.
right. Ah.
I think the point goes to me, good sir, at being perfect so far in the in the FBA draft, but I'm sure that's going to be cut off very quickly here now, considering that Alaska is not the number 4, the 4th pick
No,
overall anymore.
we're
But
all wrong.
At this point, I will take it with pride that I have the perfect score up until the actual trade.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, let's.
I have a perfect score too. It's 0 for 3.
Well, let's quickly talk
guys,
about our
we
thoughts
haven't even
on this.
talked. Yeah, Adge Martin, we have not brought him up yet, and I think he was also worth in the conversation as a top 5 candidate for this year's draft. Huge rabbit, very physical, excellent jump ability, of course, as a result of his skills. I was actually astonished to see that he wasn't ranked in the top 3, but for what it's worth, there's a lot of things that go into the final ranking, and for what that means to a team that has a top 3 pick is it's a good reference, but not necessarily the call to action. For somebody of his size, I think this is a great pick, and aside from just maybe some concerns about his outer range shooting and potential for fouling that we've not really talked about too much about a lot of these players, but there's a very physical top 6 in this year's draft. Martin going to Tallahassee, I wish him the best of luck. He's going to have a lot of competition, though, for getting any kind of starting role, I think.
That's what I was about to say.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I want to allude to. I think that's one thing that why I thought this was the perfect pick for Tallahassee. It's the word physicality, and you can't really say physicality without age. That's kind of tied together. But alluding to that, it's going to be very tough to really find any significant minutes, as I'm sure Eastman's going to allude to as well, because of the fact that they have Redfield and D'Angelo Quilkin now that has the potential to be in that starting lineup. So I think that age might be battling with DA here for a potential spot, because that's really been what the questions are at this point. So it'll be interesting what will happen with Tallahassee when it comes to starting lineup moving forward.
Yeah, real quick, because I want to dive into Baltimore real quick. This might be them planning for the future with this pick, trying to look a year ahead when both of the players go into free agency. Maybe they find the one that they like more and they keep them. And well, I mean, obviously DA is the one who was on a 1-year deal, and Redfield's on the longer one. So I think DA, like you said, is the one who's most likely fighting for his job. But let's jump into Baltimore. Baltimore, with trading up, they got rid of the idea that this is going to Alaska here, and they just signed a point guard. So what do they do at this point with this number 4 overall pick?
Well, the Spirits are a bit of a sorry, Marcus. The Spirits are a little bit of a mystery. They've now kind of given up on Alessandro Serra being their future at guard, and they are making some vouches now by saying that Lisa Bell DuPont is their starting guard. So they're looking at new talent. They're looking at potentially filling other roles on their roster. There are specific reasons why I would think that they would also be looking for a forward with this pick. Perhaps going for someone like Annika Tonpo. Or again, we could talk about Andreas fitting in at the 4 position. I don't know if that's primarily where he would want to play. As a potential candidate for the Baltimore Spirits, he's definitely worth the conversation. Ultimately, when we get to teams like this that seem to be making a lot of big moves without much cause for explanation, it's often when I default to just looking for who's the best player on the board. At the moment, that would be Saphira Kelly, but I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that they just picked up a guard, I would be surprised if they pick Saphira Kelly here. I think this is where Kokinos finally goes, honestly. I think I had him going number 5, but I don't think they'd reach all the way down to like those the group of forwards we talked about ranked 11th, 12th, or 12th, 13th, and 14th. I think they'd go with the Kokinos here. What do you think, Marcus?
I 100% agree with you. I think Kokinos is going to be the pick here. The reason why I simply say that is because the fact that Harrison York is heading into free agency, and it's a question of whether or not he will return to the Spirits, and with Lisa DuPont coming into the fray. This feels like a a team that's trying to retool into a somewhat younger squad that is ready to win now. So I think with the fact that they do have Eric Toivonen on the roster as well for the next few years, it just pretty much just screams that to me. So I wouldn't be too surprised if they decide to go for Keonan here because of that fact.
Yeah, but I think I see the commissioner getting ready to take the stage now.
For the 4th pick of the 2020 FBA Draft, the Baltimore Spirits have selected Saphira Kelly, a point guard Blue Ocean Slug from Pinion State University. Congratulations to you, Saphira, on being the number 4 pick for the 2020 FBA Draft. I will return when the next pick is selected by the Albany Alphas, followed by the Arizona Whips, who are on deck.
Wow.
Well, I'm sorry, Walker. You did not lock in your pick. You are still 0-4.
I'm on the board. I said Saphira Kelly.
You said you were thinking, but you couldn't commit to it last time.
I defaulted. I defaulted to
give it to him.
Saphira. How?
Give it
no,
to him.
Ryan.
Give it.
Fine, you know what? You can have it. But technically, all of us said Saphira Kelly at 4, just to the
Yes.
other, just to Alaska, not to Baltimore.
Oh, okay.
But it's still a 4-0 for me. Let's just way that alluded to. I am still perfect so far
God,
on this draft.
I swear, if you go perfect for the lottery, I am going to never hear the end of
Former
it.
Alaska Arctic is making his voice heard tonight.
Yes. I'm finally be able to put my voice when it comes to the Arctic. What a surprise here when it comes to Baltimore selecting this for their pick. I mean, this is the best point guard in the draft, and that's going to be a really key factor of them being the pretty much captures the 6th first spot. But it's such a surprise of picking something for that role this high.
So I will cut in and point out a lot of our critiques of Saphira is that she is a point scoring first point guard. I wonder if picking her here means that they're going to try her out at the shooting guard spot and go small ball with a 5'9" shooting guard, which might mean Lindsey Morrison is out of a starting job here.
That is true. Lindsey Morrison, a player who has been a very serviceable one for the most part, but hasn't really got a chance to get her paws wet when it comes to really solidifying and being a potential stud here in the FBA. So maybe having a chance to have more of a spark when it comes to the offensive game on the perimeter would be interesting to see with Baltimore.
I'm trying to read the boards at the same time that we're talking and trying to think up what to say here. The idea that Saphira Kelly, it crossed through my mind that, again, this team would pick up the best possible player that is available rather than doing anything that's particularly need-filling at the moment. We still have free agency to express some of these changes in the roster. And Lindsey Morrison being referred to as a stud is quite a take that I'm not going to get into very
I never said she was a stud. I said she had a chance to be a stud, but never worked out.
Baltimore was in the conference finals this past year. I don't know or they were definitely in the running for it. I can't remember right offhand. But all I can say is that Saphira being a point shooter, first point guard is actually an excellent point. Is that making it any more easy for the team to address what was potentially one of their weaknesses in last year's overall performances, which was being able to stop the teams they played against from going out of control and scoring. I don't know if Saphira is that defensive filler that they need. We'll see.
Well, they might be going the Bangor route, all offense. We saw them get a ring with it despite having one of the worst defenses in the league.
For sure.
What happened to defense wins championships? What happened?
That went the way of Healy Davis. But let's jump on over to Albany.
Albany Alphas.
And I want to hear your thoughts there, where you're thinking.
Right now, okay, I'm gonna bring him up one more time. Andreas Kokkinus.
Eventually, one day.
Eventually,
Man.
one day, somebody will realize, you know what, this guy's got potential. I'm picking him. They don't have a strong need at guard either. So I don't know whether or not the Alphas are looking to fill bench roles either. At the time of our review of, you guys ran a mock draft. I think by
Yes.
now,
Well, both of us had Kokinos going at 5, so
Yes, we did.
this is
we
where
did.
Marcus either makes it or breaks it.
It's like really we're getting on the halfway point of the lottery picks, and I've been perfect so far, and I'm ready to keep that going if it's possible.
so if he doesn't go here, I'll feel quite sad for the Red Dragon. The whole story of the FBA is one of making an idea out of a concept rather than the concept out of an idea. What I mean by that is that you pick your players based on what you see in them, potentially not on the court necessarily, but also off the court. And sometimes we can't judge perfectly based on that. And all we can really do is talk about what we see based on the current needs. And for me, Albany, it's clear that they need to find somebody who would be willing to play at the 4 or 5 position. And Kinos is perfect for that.
Yeah.
Personally, I'm hoping it's not him, just so that Marcus can not have a perfect start to this game.
So you just want them to reach for a center? Is that what you're? Is
Yeah,
that
I
what
want
I'm hearing?
Iverson. I want Iverson here. But
Well,
I was to say, I think Albany's pick is in.
Okay.
For the number 5 pick of the 2020 FBA Draft, the Albany Alphas have selected Callum Williamson, a guard wallaby from Claiborne University. Congratulations to you, Callum, on being the number 5 pick of the 2020 FBA Draft. I shall return for the next pick when the Arizona Whips have confirmed their selection. After that will be the Queen's Pride. Thank you.
I did it. I ended.
okay.
I ended the streak.
All right, you better feel proud of yourself. But you know what? It's okay. Being perfect for the first 4 picks, I'm totally okay with that.
I'm
But
sure
let's go
you
ahead
are.
and get into to Callum Williamson, going point guard here. Are you surprised at any point?
I mentioned, I think, in our mock draft that I wasn't sure if they felt like they were happy with their current point guard. I kind of alluded to, I thought Saphira would go here if she did not get picked in the top 4. I'm not terribly surprised Callum was ranked in the top 10, so it's not that much of a reach. It is surprising with Kokino still on the board that they went with him, though, in my opinion.
Yeah, but I think at the same time, I guess they're just really going bank on possibly bringing in Terry, returning Terry, and also probably getting a decent big in free agency. Because as we've alluded to during our mock draft, there's a rich amount of people in the center and power forward position in its own right when it comes to certain players. It's just the amount of money is the concern, really, at the end of the day.
So much money.
Yes.
Money left, money right, all the money. And sorry, Marcus, for ruining your streak. I guess we can't talk about that anymore. Listen, the matter of picking Callum Williamson might have been one that they didn't have the ability to pick Saphira Kelly. Actually, both players are pretty similar in how they like to shoot, which is, again, shoot first from deep. And Callum has expressed at least a little bit more of an integral knowledge of the sport, which I'm not trying to say anything about Saphira Kelly's aptitude, but in terms of accuracy, Callum has fallen short of what Saphira Kelly has shown. So it's a little bit surprising that he actually made it in the top 5 here. However, I will say this, and this kind of can be used as a transition to Arizona, which is our next team on the board. Best player available position
Well,
is Arizona.
so Kokinos here doesn't make sense unless they are looking him at power forward. Because Morgan McCarthy has the center position locked down, I think, for the rest of his career, should he choose to play here. I think then the question is, do they want him at power forward, or is there a position elsewhere they feel like they could improve on here with what's left on the board?
Well, I think they're one of the rare teams that could be starting rookie they pick here on their top 5. Kokinos is the only one I could see where he'd be ready to do that from day one. Even if he started at the 4.
Well, I know for when it comes to our mock draft, we both selected Kyler. Well, I selected Kyler Anari here, in this case, to possibly be the player that they go for, because they don't really have a really big answer here for the shooting guard position. Really, well, the small forward position more so, because they have Wesley Lax heading into free agency himself. And I'm sure that this team is kind of thriving a little bit more on youth, more so, because they do have O'Hara starting for their point guard in the point guard position. And I believe Tino Hazari is their starting shooting guard. And they're pretty much going into their second and third year respectively. So I think that they might actually try to rely on a more youthful approach and go for Kyler Anari here for that starting.
Right, but why would they pick Kyler Anari as a shooting guard? Why would they pick him
Well,
here?
he's a swing for, is he not? And they could put him at small forward, especially at his height of 6'8", I believe.
Okay, so for the same reasons that you could put Kokinos at the 4 position.
Exactly. I mean, he's only, I think, 6'11", I think.
Yeah, it's a possibility. I think Kokinos is a very good a good pick here, though it does kind of put you into a little bit of fear if you are of scaring off McCarthy, since he is on his last year on his current contract as well, and he's expecting a big payday from the Whips too.
I mean, I can't speculate on things that are possible.
That's what you get paid for at FSPN, though.
That's what we're here for. We're here to speculate. This is what this entire thing is for.
Speculate to accumulate.
I speculate that it'll be Kokinos, and my reason is this: because Arizona needs to have a better defensive game the upcoming season if they want a better chance. And while Kyler Anari is a great idea, he's shown that he's struggled a little bit on the offensive side of the ball. So I'm not so sure, especially when we talk about a player who's, if you want to go with the rebounder, guy who's going to catch the ball off the rebound and make a few shots, possibly Inari is a good choice here. I just don't see where the Whips have made a ton of what their ideas are this season. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, well, I think the pick is in.
For the number 6 pick of the 2020 FBA Draft, the Arizona Whips have selected Kyler Anari, a guard forward Arctic Fox from Cal Poly. Congratulations to you, Kyler, on being the number 6 pick of the 2020 FBA Draft. I will return when the next pick has been chosen by the Queen's Pride, shortly followed by the Pittsburgh Keystones. Thank you.
Can I get paid to be a general manager?
Well, let me just point this out. All you've gotten right so far is who's picking who, but who will actually be the best is the question that will remain to be seen.
That is the truth, but man, oh man, Kyler Anari being the choice here
I've never been near the end of it.
Oh no, you're not. 100%, you're not. But as I alluded to, with the fact that they have Wesley Lux heading out, he really hasn't been the main engine. It's kind of funny because the Whips had the same problem as the Lone Stars have, which is trying to find that small forward to help solidify. And right now they have a chance to do it here with Kyler Inari if they decide to put him in that spot.
Yeah.
You know,
Go
I'm
ahead.
gonna stop trying to. I'm gonna stop trying to guess where Kukinos is going. Been a
It's okay.
horrible
I had that
strategy.
same situation last year with a player.
Um, you know, again, I think we did mention that it would be an overall good choice to go at the 2 and address Kyler and Ari or get him sent to the whips. I'm trying to speak and my brain is malfunctioning, but I try to look at teams on an all-around basis, and Arizona could have picked anyone, I think, and it would have been a good pick. Whereas we get to some of the later teams now, as we start getting towards the end of the top 10 here, it becomes a question of what kind of moves are they looking to make, what players are leaving contracts. And I think the Queen's Pride is an interesting one, as we, is pick number 7 now. Lenchka is a free agent this year. Sorry, it's Goldshine that's a free agent this year. So are they looking for a guard, or are they looking to fill potentially the departure of Bear Queen from Queens?
Kokinos. Kokinos. Everyone, let's chant it together. We're going to do it. Kokinos.
No.
We're going to get it eventually.
Oh.
I was not expecting him to still be on the board here, and the fact that Lee Bearquin renegotiated, even though he hasn't received any offers yet, I would be shocked if... I've been shocked multiple times, but I would be shocked here if Queens does not go with Kokinos just to replace him. I mean, maybe they have a free agent in mind.
Does that basically say that it's the end of Bear Queen in Queens?
The dude renegotiated. Like, I don't think he was getting paid a fair amount. I don't think he was looking to get a $30 million deal here. And the fact that they picked Luther Kierkegaard last year, who is a true center, I kind of feel like maybe he at least can pull in the starter position. And you have Kokinos, who is rated 7th at number 7, who can play power forward. So why not?
Yeah, I have to agree there. I think Kokinos probably is the best option at this point. Right now, they don't really have a lot of answers here when it comes to their big furs outside of. Well, let's see who's actually under contract as currently for them. I don't think there really is a much outside of Luther. So I wouldn't be surprised if they go for Kokinos here, not just because of the fact of possibly getting another big in the offseason as well, but also just for depth in general. They don't have a lot of depth here in the forward position.
Don't. And, for what it's worth, I would say Kokinos. I'm not, because it's a bad luck.
You jinx everyone.
I got invited here.
Was it an invite, or was it a, oh God, no one else wants to deal with Marcus and Ryan?
Do this again. Okay, you know what? Kokinos, there. Going to Queens.
Now, originally, Marcus, you had a Tonpo going here. Do you think maybe they still consider Tonpo here?
It's a possibility because of the fact of the shooting guard still kind of being a little bit open here. That's what's interesting. It's just like, which one do you think is the most desperate need at this point? They do have the money to possibly get a big fur in free agency that they can come in and really be that same spark as Lee Barraquin has, but it really just depends on how much money they're willing to give up. While when it comes to Kokinos, you don't have to worry about that until year 3. So being able to delay that a little bit could be good here. But it just really depends on which one do they think is the most dire need at the end of the day.
It's hard to rationalize right now. There's a lot of good point guards coming up, but it's not a position that they need to fill here. So I'd be really astonished if they went for anything other than a forward or center here.
And when I mentioned in the draft, I definitely thought Callum Williamson here, just because with Cassia Lenchka being 34, how much longer does she really have in the league? But obviously, surprise, surprise, went before I expected. So now we're kind of left asking questions. And I think I see the pick is coming in, so I'm just going to keep saying Kokinos because that's what I hope and pray.
Gonna hide under a desk.
For the number 7 pick of the 2020 FBA Draft, the Queen's Pride have selected Andreas Koukinos, a forward center red dragon from Pensacola Predatorial and Mechanical. Congratulations to you, Andreas, on being the number 7 pick of the 2020 FBA Draft. I will return for the next pick when the Pittsburgh Keystones have confirmed with me their selection, and Lorraine Firestorm is on deck. Thank you.
We did it. We did it.
Yes, so now we have the highest rated center now off the board with Kokinos heading over to Queens. That means that it's pretty much a guarantee that Lee Barraquin will play for someone else this upcoming offseason.
It's quite a change from what I think has been an interesting last few years for the Queen's Pride, but they do need to make some major changes. And actually, for what it's worth, this is a great place for Kokinos to land and find some footing. Whether or not that's going to be an interesting point of contention later on in what I'm referring to is the competition between Kierkegaard and Kokinos for the number 5 role is up for debate. But the matter is, the number 4 position, he could start at or forward and make his impact known right away at the beginning of his career. So it's not the worst place he could have gone. Just expected him to be earlier.
That we did, and I think now with moving on to the last pick of the lottery, Marcus and I both were of the opinion that Pittsburgh is going to reach down for a forward here. We disagreed. I hate to say it, but with how Marcus has been doing tonight, I'm pretty sure if they were to reach, they're going to go with his selection, because apparently all the scouts were listening into the mock draft and only listened to Marcus.
I mean, it really just depends. As we're looking over to what we have left in the board right now, the highest right now is Anika Tunbo. If they really want to go for that route of a possible forward, I think that could be the best selection for them if it's possible.
I think now we start talking about what Pittsburgh needs. And one major thing that happened this offseason is the retirement of Randy Ketcher. Is their point guard for so many years. So they, in my opinion, are looking for a point guard that can be the next guy or a girl for that team.
Do you give up on Ulysses then?
Well, Ulysses is proving to be a potential candidate for that position. I don't know if he's necessarily a pure point guard.
I mean, he has done well in that position. I think with Tyrone Gale, you have to concede that he is the best shooting guard on the team, at least in that position. So I definitely think they need to look for a pure passing point guard to complement him, or someone who can help stretch the defense. 1 year is kind of hard to judge a player on, so I'd be a little surprised if they went with another point guard here, especially since none have slipped. If Safira was still here, I think they would go for her. But the fact that Safira is not here, again, it's tough right now because I really think they need a forward. But again, you have to reach down to grab one.
Yeah, it's really just trying to be looking. If you're looking to try and fill the power forward slot, or possibly really get more of a big for in general, you probably want to go for that more, considering that both Waylon Stone and Christian Hanks are heading into free agency. I'm sure one of them will probably come back, if not both. But it's good to pretty much try and solidify that depth in general for Pittsburgh.
Well, Ryan, let me ask you this. Do they reach down then? Because I'm kind of in the agreement that they would go for the best guard available in general. I was just kind of the point guard. Do you reach down and go for, someone like Tucker Iverson, a pick that's number 8? That's the thing.
I could see it, honestly. I mean, the fact that the Dragon's gone, I think everyone predicted would go in the top 8. Iverson. I
Maybe
really,
Janine Henderson.
no, I don't even think that far down. I think Iverson would be an interesting selection here. However, I think they're going to stick with their horse. Is they have two that they have going in the free agency this offseason, so perhaps at least one of them being brought back. I could maybe see them reaching down for like a Gavraw Cryer, maybe even if they're really thinking guard or Tyreek Murphy. I mean, I kind of had them going a little later in the draft, but if you really think guard, I could see one of those going and trying to develop them. But I just think that sets a bad precedent for trying to keep Ulysses and or Gale in the future.
We're kind of in between this forward and guard filler role. We could also make the argument for a swing for like Blake Kelly.
Well, I was about to say I'm going Tompo here. That's my final selection. I think that's the best of both worlds.
And
All right.
you know,
Just so you
if
know, that'll
I-
make me correct again.
It will. I don't care.
okay, well, Mr. Correct, what's your pick?
Well, actually, I think that it's either gonna be either Tompo or Jetson, because I do think that when it comes to their forward slot, that's a little bit more of a dire need, in my opinion. It's because of the fact that they don't really have that strong of big for depth in general. So even though they could bring both of the horses back, I still think it might be a good idea to try and fill in that depth. This is kind of one of those teams where it's very interesting to see if they want to really want to answer with trying to fill in that slot or try to bring some people back, because they have a lot of money too. We have to put that into consideration as well.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think the pick is in, getting slid to the
Okay.
elephant last second.
For the number 8 pick of the 2020 FBA Draft, the Pittsburgh Keystones have selected Damian Myers, a forward black-footed ferret from South Dakota State University. Congratulations, Damian, on becoming the 8th pick in this 2020 FBA Draft. I shall return after the Lorraine Firestorm have confirmed their selection, shortly followed by the Huntsville Mayors. Thank you.
Well, 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 Marcus. Look who was right for once.
Oh my God!
Yes,
Look at his
first time.
face. He's
Congratulations.
so wrong right now.
Oh my goodness. Your first one, I'm very
Well,
proud
no,
of
that's a
you.
lie. I got the first two right too. It's just been a while since I got something right.
Yes, yes,
Saphira was my next one, but that was kind of a fluke by all means.
right. Well,
Let's talk about Damian Myers here at the number 8 pick. The fact is, Eastman mentioned that they did need to fill a forward role, and we did kind of overlook Myers for a moment here, being able to fill possibly a number 3 or number 4 spot on the roster.
Well, I think the big thing here is actually what Eastman has alluded to during our mock draft is the fact that that is one of the best defensive forwards in this draft. They're known to be able to rebound and block very well, and their post defense has been phenomenal. So really, they want to be able to try and kind of have a formidable wall when it comes to the post. And I think Damian Myers fits that bill.
Yeah, going defense. You talked about defense wins championships. We'll have to see if his career leads up to something similar to that. But looking on over to the next pick, the Lorraine Firestorm traded up from number 11 to number 9. I'm a little surprised they did it so early before the draft. Did they maybe have someone in mind? And is that player still on the board here at number 9?
That is a great question. It's such a small move up as well, that really it means that they didn't think they would be on the board by the number 11 pick. So were they hoping for one of these potential guards to be still available at this point? We talk about the 2 guards that are playing for the Lorraine Firestorm right now. Their starting lineup, we have Akiak Pratt and Alicia Silverman, both of which have been serviceable. And then we talk about really the top 5 in general for Lorraine is pretty satisfactory. So what are the Firestorm trying to accomplish here? Is it to fill the bench role, or is it necessarily that they're looking for somebody to replace Alicia in the future, which would mean they would be looking for a point guard?
I would have to allude to on the latter, really more so in general, just trying to find any sorts of upgrade for this team, because that's really been one of the struggles that they've had, is that they've tried an abundance of things, even at one point wanting to try and throw a lot of money to Jonathan Lawyer to see if we can bring in, but they decided to retract, considering that he would be too expensive for them with the fact that they only have 30 million left available for free agency for them to spend. Now, with saying that, it'll be interesting if they want to go reach here a little bit, because I know for me, I went with Callum Williamson, which is not going to be the case now, considering that he got picked up at number 5. So, are they willing to try and reach up a little bit to see if they can get that guaranteed point guard?
Well,
I actually don't think they have to reach all that far, which is again why I think the number moving up from 11 to 9 is very interesting. Now it's true that some of these the big name top 5 players are gone, but they still have Eric Baltsev, they have Tyreek Murphy available, have Jean-Ferdinand Groucrier on the board, who we've talked about briefly. So there's still plenty of point guards that are available. It's just a matter of choosing which one, I guess, if we're going that route, which one would be the most serviceable as a bench, or a 6th for coming off the bench, being able to score enough to help the rest of the team out.
yeah, but we keep forgetting about, obviously, the rumors going around of them pursuing McDonald Rambo, battling with Bangor to secure him for a few more seasons. I kind of don't feel like they're giving up on him, and I think he wants to play point guard.
Yeah, I think that really at the end of the day is just, once again, how much money are they willing to give up for that player? And even though they decide not to, if they do decide to end up getting Rainbow and win out outright, the question comes into mind is their depth in general. Because I know for a moment they don't really have a lot of people in on the depth chart right now. Obviously, as they need to fill it in the near as the season goes on. It's going to be really hard to do that with 30 million, especially if you want to try and get somebody from free agencies, because that's really what the fight is. How much money are you willing to give up, and how much do you believe that the player is going to believe in your product, in your slogan? What do they believe in? What you're preaching is pretty much the basic thing that needs to be asked here when it comes to free agency, with not that much to really play with when it comes to making those big name moves.
Yes. Do you believe in a storm made of fire? It's a great question.
That's a terrible sci-fi movie. And speaking of terrible sci-fi movies, I think I see an elephant stampeding up to the stage now.
My God, the worst sci-fi movie.
For the number 9 pick of the 2020 FBA Draft, the Lorraine Firestorm have selected Anika Tampo, a forward guard Fossa from University Virgin Islands. Congratulations to you, Anika, on being the 9th pick of the 2020 FBA Draft. I will return once the Huntsville Mayors have confirmed their selection. After that, we have the Tennessee Moonshiners. Thank you.
All right. After all that discussion, though, having a point guard, they decide to go with a more forward centered player.
I don't necessarily agree with this pick, and it's not necessarily because the Firestorm have a lot of depth at the forward position, but it's just because I think there were other players on the board that were potentially going to be more of an immediate effect to the team. And that's why I mentioned so hard the point guards. I didn't get to it just before we, before Livingston came on the deck there. But the 3 players that they have behind Silverman right now are Fitch Loomis, Donald Rainbow, and Rolling House. And if McDonald Rainbow doesn't end up coming back to Lorraine, I fear what's going to happen there in terms of guard depth for the team. So, there must be something there that I'm not seeing. at the moment, but I wish I knew a little bit more about Annika Tomko, other than the fact that she does provide a lot of defensive need. So if Lorraine is looking to become the defensive, at least she plays more of a defensive game. So if they're looking that route, I could maybe understand it.
Yeah.
Well, I
Well,
think
go ahead, Marcus. I wanted to cut to Huntsville when we can.
yeah, I just want to bring up real quick is the fact that there might be a little bit of a coaching decision to play here because, if you know the head coach Sabrina Lucifer for the Lorraine Firestorm, she is more so known to be a more defensive favored type coach, so that might come into play on the reason why they went with this pick. So it's interesting to see how they want to go with this here, and I do question about who they want to put into this lineup because obviously this is more so of a bench type role that might be able to start in the near future because of the fact that they do have a couple of players who are going to be on their last year soon, and I'm more so looking at Gundio. He'll be on his last year, so they might be considering moving on from him.
Potentially, but let's dive into the Mares. We had a lot of activity with them moving 2 players in. Obviously, Baptiste and Buckner playing in the forward positions means I would be a little surprised if we see them go with forward here. I'd have to imagine that even I think they're going to go Iverson based off the fact that they have Wendy Brown, Lauren Fash, potentially 2 starters with Buckner and Baptiste. That just leaves the center position potentially. I mean, obviously Farhadovich is getting kind of up there in age, and you have to wonder how much longer is she going to be viable as a starter. And the best center on the board at this point is Iverson.
Yeah, I will have to agree with you there. I think Iverson, this might be one of the bigger reaches that we could talk about here. But really, with the amount of changes that they have made with the trade so far, with Travis Buckner obviously filling in that small forward role that's going to be needed, and they do have Baptiste as well that will be able to fill in that power forward position, but possibly even the center position as well. So I think that it's going to be interchangeable of who they want.
And Turnbull as well is still on the team, I believe, for 1 more year at least. So that she can grow into that potential center position as well, definitely a possibility. I think this is another case where you look at, and disregarding for the moment some of the big moves that this team has made. Certainly they might have an ulterior motive that I'm not even aware of right now. But I would operate under the assumption that they're still looking at potentially some depth at the forward position. And that would cover potentially too some conversations about Dupuis and whether or not he would return to the team. So, we could talk about potentially just anybody who would be able to come off the bench for this team as well and be a good point scorer for the Mayors. That could be where we see somebody like Guru Kriye going. It also could be, again, this decision, and I'm kind of tipsy-turvy, obviously.
I was going to say, I think in the next 50 seconds we need a decision from you.
Okay, Jetson or Guru Kriye would be my 2, depending on which route they go.
Well, if either of those get picked, we're only awarding you half a point here.
I'm too far down anyway on this whole game.
I love how we're making this a game now of who gets the most right.
Steak dinner's on the line.
Right, you're right, and I'm sure I'm gonna enjoy.
Look, you don't want to pay for Marcus's dinner; it's expensive.
Oh yes, for sure. So you might want to catch up.
I mean, I was supposed to be trying for a steak dinner.
I mean, you're getting a nice salary. I hope to be here, but I think I see the commissioner heading on stage now.
For the 10th pick of the 2020 FBA Draft, the Huntsville Mayors have selected Tucker Iverson, a center forward, tap a newly orangutan from Great Lakes Mammalia. Congratulations to you, Tucker, on being the number 10 pick of the FBA draft. I shall return for the next pick when the Tennessee Moonshiners have confirmed their selection. After that, we will see the Las Vegas Wildcards. Thank you.
Wow, that is certainly
I
a
can
reach.
I can feel the heat and rage radiating off you. It
I
keeps me
mean,
warm here.
it feels a need. It feels a need for sure. And we expected a team to go for a big reach here. So I can't really get mad at them for that, for wanting to go for this route. It does feel like it's a sense of desperation, considering that there aren't a lot of big fur players within the top 24 in general. So really picking Tucker here does make sense when it comes to that regard. But I will say that they do have some options to fill in that fifth slot if they need to on their roster. So possibly going for someone who is a little bit more higher skilled on the draft board would probably make a little bit more sense than going for that desperation reach.
Well, I personally thought Iverson was a little lower ranked than should have been. I mean, considering his performance in the FCA tournament, I thought he would at least have been closer to the top 10. So at the very least, drafted top 10. So
Yep.
I'll take that as a win prediction that the Huntsville Mares agree with me. Maybe they'll hire me as a GM someday. Not
As a
it,
GM.
it just depends on how well Tucker really does, especially being thrown into the wolves right now, because that's essentially what they're going to have to rely on for Huntsville.
Know many wolves who would take offense to that statement made just now.
Well, I mean, we're not talking about. Look, let's move
I'm
on to
kidding.
let's move on to the Tennessee, the team that moved back 2 picks.
Yes.
Uh,
Tennessee moved back 2 picks, and I think it's maybe because they recognized that this is a very guard-heavy top 12, and guard is certainly a position that they're looking at this offseason.
Oh, no doubt. I definitely had them picking on my mock draft a guard, the best guard available. I think they got a. It was only 1.5 million, but that 1.5 million could come in handy with nailing a good contract with some more depth players.
Right.
What?
Even if this pick, which again, it could be that they go a different route, but they'd have to reach down the board, as we saw with Iverson. Now, Iverson, I'll just mention this briefly before we back to Tennessee. Iverson did prove himself at the combine, and I think that's why we saw him picked at number 10. And that's why we have the combine, is to show the talent of the players based on what they can prove at that game, when it all comes down to all the anxiety and the stress and everything. I can understand it. Now we're talking about a team that I think just needs to build depth, and the best way to do that is to sign the best available player. And in this particular draft, and in the particular orders we've talked about, that would to me mean of the guards that is one of many of the guards that is available. It just depends on who they think would be the best fit for the Moonshiners. Now that could be a topic for discussion.
Well, let's go with that then. Who are the group of 3 guards? Well, let's talk about the 3 guards that are all bunched together. Who do you like here then?
Marcus, you go first.
All right. Well, I think really, considering the fact that they have made some of the moves to open up their point guard position just a little bit, I do think they could possibly, which gives a point to Eastman a little bit, but whatever. I think Tyreek could possibly be the choice here. It would make a little bit of sense in that regard, because of the fact that they have decided to cut a little bit of their depth in the guard position. So possibly going that route would be interesting for me, because that is the best player available in this particular draft. And that's just kind of what I expect them to do here.
Uh, I will actually agree with you with Murphy. I think in terms of the point guards that we've talked about, um, we've mentioned uh, Louis Crier, Guru Crier a couple times, um, and we've talked about. We haven't talked about Eric Baltaev. I think Tyreek Murphy, in terms of just team chemistry, has the ability to go to Tennessee and command some attention there. Maybe one of the other point guards on the team wouldn't be able to do. And you look for that as as a general manager. You look for somebody who's going to take the reins over and really pull a team together. That's something that I saw Murphy exhibit at the combine that I thought was actually very admirable. So we'll see.
Yeah, and you obviously mentioned the French player that I butcher her name every time, Jean Ferdinand. Uh, some things to keep in mind with him. He has played professionally over in the EFBL, won the championship with France. However, he is also very young, only 18. So you kind of have a gamble there of, is this his full potential, or is there a lot more room he can grow as a player? A player that hasn't played in college, it's 19, 20 years old. It's very difficult to make a judgment call like that. I'm going to stick with Tyreek Murphy just because that's what my mock draft says. But any of the three guards I think here would work fine, and I think I see the commissioner heading to the stage.
All right.
For the number 11 pick of the 2020 FBA Draft, the Tennessee Moonshiners have selected Jean-Ferdinand Guiraud-Crier, a point guard Scottish fold Chartreux mix from the Université PSL. Congratulations to you, Jean-Ferdinand, on being the number 11 pick of the 2020 FBA Draft. I will return for the next pick, where the Las Vegas Wildcards have confirmed with me their selection, followed by the Seattle Summit. Thank you.
Okay, I am petitioning that his jersey number be 11, based off the fact that he was the 11th pick, ranked 11th at the combine, and was ranked 11th overall in the top 24.
Yes. I think really what it comes down to is the fact that this is an interesting player here. He's not known for passing, so I do see some concerns when it comes to the point guard position still, but it's still an interesting choice nonetheless. You have definitely an offensive heavy player here, and I think it's going to be something that they want to try and play around with more, being more of an offensive juggernaut.
Well, and Eastman touched on it before Livingston stepped on stage, but we're just talking about how here's this young kid who managed to win the FBL championship, and despite his age, has been an instrumental part of that team going that far and being victorious. So, is it worth having a few extra years of this guy being available on your team for the fact that he could provide a really strong potential starter role before he even is age 25? That's a really interesting aspect to think about.
Yep, and I think also putting into the fact that when it comes to their positions and stuff, Russell Savoy, as I alluded to in the mock draft, is not getting any younger, and it could be a possibility of being a replacement for Russell in general, and we can possibly see Arthur Selby really play along with I'm trying not to botch this name, Roy Creer, and
Oh,
it, it's going to be interesting. I tried. Okay.
I get a point then.
Fine, you get half a point. But let's move on to a Las Vegas team that I predicted would take a point guard here. God, it is. There are a couple on the board. Baltave and Murphy, I definitely could see. But now that they no longer have Lisa they're going after, that does open them up to go after some of the free agents who maybe haven't received offers yet. Dennis Summers obviously had his offers, I think, pulled when Alaska secured Sarah, so he's still on the board. Derek Kim obviously being heavily pursued. We still have a couple others coming off of their contracts, or like Atis out of Lorraine, who was bought out of his rookie deal, could be considered a steal for a team that's looking for a point guard. But what do you guys think? Do you think they're going to go point guard? Obviously, they picked up a small forward in Umechi. Does that mean that they look guard, or maybe consider power forward center here with another reach down into like the Al Amin at 21?
Ooh,
Right
that
now
is
they have
certainly a reach.
right now they have the Dunphy sisters who are playing their swing role, and they have several different players playing the forward position. So they could go for a center further down the board, a pure center, someone who could start potentially in the future, or they could be looking for somebody who fills a bench role as a point guard. Could see either of those things happening here. And again, this is the kind of the draft where you would want to make a decision based around who's available. Well, then at this time, the point guard is certainly available, and I think there are a lot of good point guards available. But they might be trying still to fill that role with somebody else in free agency.
Yeah, it really just comes to the question of where do they really want to spend their money for the most part. As we've alluded to, they have really been pushing to send a lot of their money into the guard position. That's really been their more favorite one. But now that with Lisa coming off the board, it does open things up quite a lot. At the same time, though, you do have Tyreek sitting there. As the best player available right now, he does fit that role, and he does know how to pass more so compared to the other guards that are around in that area. So I feel like they could just say, you know what, it is a little bit of a risk to try and go for a younger player once again and try to develop them once again. But I mean, it doesn't matter if you want to. This team has been known to go a little bit risque when it comes to their moves. So I wouldn't be too surprised if they decide to go for a point guard here. But then again, it doesn't surprise me if they go for that reach with Alamin as well. So it's a toss up.
Well, remember last year they reached with Xavier Cross all the way on the cusp into the top 24 with one of their picks. So it's not out of the realm for this team, but I think I do see that the pick is coming in. If you want to give a quick guess before they head up on the board, Walker.
Let's go with Guru. No.
I already picked.
Darn it, I'm too late.
For the number 12 pick of the 2020 FBA Draft, the Las Vegas Wildcards have selected Tamika Jetson, a forward Black Panther cheerleader hybrid from CSU Palmcaster. Thank you and congratulations to Tamika Jetson for being the number 12 pick of the FBA Draft. I shall return when the Seattle Summit have confirmed their selection, followed by the San Jose Thrust. Thank you.
Let me guess. You were going to say Tamika Jetson. And that you just ran out of time.
I'm going to say Tyreek Murph. You must know.
Okay, at least you're honest. Half a point for honesty. Now you're back to 1 full point for that.
No, I don't even care about my stupid points anymore.
Okay, well, stop counting them. We'll let the interns keep track.
Well, I will say this is going to answer some of their big for depth, as we know that Quintessa Hartnett is heading into free agency as well, and I believe their best power forward option right now is, I believe it's Freddie Varnaghi or Crosby Sutters. I'm not entirely sure. I gotta look at the depth chart one more time, but they do need to have some more answers when it comes to their big furs, and really the only one that you could probably say that you can feel confident that it has a bit of a starting role is the journey for Marion B. Wallstein. She's been being very serviceable from team to team. And outside of that, there really hasn't been a major answer really for those slots. So I'm not too surprised with this pick.
Yeah, I think depth is the way to go, especially when the team is in flux. But let's move on to Seattle at number 13. Trading up, blowing up their team almost, getting rid of Gold and Kusick after only 1 year on their new contracts. It seems like Seattle not happy with where they ended up in the first round of their rebuild. And they're keeping, I'm assuming, Delmont and DQ, and they've decided to blow up the middle of the roster. So what do they do here at 13, considering they traded up from 20?
Well, go ahead.
Sure. Best shooting guard available at the moment is also, in some ways, a small forward player is Blake Kelly, and I could see where they would try and grab Blake at this position. Is that a position necessarily I think that he would have gone at? I don't know. That's a good question. The idea around actually that Jetson would have gone to Seattle if she were still available is an interesting prospect, because I thought that they would need some forward depth for the Summit. I think what they have right now and where they're looking at going for the rest of this season, they need to at least have somebody who could fill roles, even if they bring in somebody from free agency. We're starting to get to this point in the draft here too, where you're looking at maybe somebody who could potentially start, but will need some assistance from the rest of the big members of the team. So do you bring in somebody who could be a mentor underneath Delmont, who could maybe be a potential number 2 spot shooting guard in the future, or do you bring somebody in as a forward who could be mentored under DQ as one of the bigger defensive players? Do you look for someone again like, let's say, actually, I don't know who that would be because there's very few power forwards in this top 24.
Yeah, you're basically left with the big furs of like Al Amin or going into the on the cusp players, which I don't think Seattle moved up to 13. The draft an on the cusp player, and I think you say Blake Kelly just because tall at 6'9". Much like the rest of some of the top 5 picks was a above average height for the position. But Marcus, what do you think here?
Well,
like tall players.
I do think that with the fact that they decided to move on from Kusick, that really opens up the shooting guard spot, which is a very big need. And I think in order to really pretty much work with Delmont, you also need to find a way to get some shooters around him. That's really been one of the big things that could help him thrive, is that they're able to find players that can shoot amongst the perimeter. So with that being said, it was just kind of funny because I did pick him in my original slot at number 13 for Winnipeg originally, which is a Tyreek, but you can also put in an opportunity for Eric as well. I think either one of those two could be a good spot here, but because of the fact that I want another point and I really want that free steak, I'm going to go with Tyreek.
You're going to go with who?
Tyreek.
Okay, you started to chuckle and it turned into like a wheezing announcement.
Well, you know my pick. I think it's going to be Tyreek here. I think this is a possibility for them to really get that much needed shooting, since they moved on from Kusick after 1 year, which in its own right is extremely surprising.
I was going to say, what was it that those 2 players didn't fulfill that they're looking to get here? I don't know if that's necessarily like the question that Seattle is trying to answer tonight with this draft pick. But you bring up the point, they moved up for this pick. So it's totally possible that they're looking to grab somebody here that won't be available by number 20. And at that point, I would be saying somebody who would be a guard that would be a possible mentor underneath Delmont that would help in the future. Yeah. Murphy is an interesting possibility there.
Yeah, well, I think the commissioner's going to come on stage and announce it right now.
For the number 13 pick of the 2020 FBA Draft, the Seattle Summit have selected Blake Kelly, Godford Seekadir from North Carolina Wolfpack University. Congratulations to you, Blake, on being the number 13 pick of the 2020 FBA Draft. I will return for the next pick when the San Jose Thrust have confirmed their selection. The Montana Howlers are on deck.
Now,
you.
I'm going to let you have your moment over there, Walker, but first I want to go ahead and introduce guest commentator for the next couple picks, Scott Masterson. How you doing tonight?
Hey guys.
You sound
How's
tired
everyone?
already. It's only pick
Yeah.
13.
This draft has been full of a lot of surprises and some non-surprises, but the surprises definitely got to me at some point. I don't know.
Well, why don't you go ahead and give your thoughts before we allow Walker to gloat?
About Blake.
Yeah, in general, Blake, or if you want to comment on some of the last picks that you've been keeping an eye on, or
I
maybe.
mean, I like to gloat in general.
Oh. I think that this is a pretty decent pick for the Summit, given that they traded away Kaspar Kusik to the Winnipeg Voyagers. I think that having Zoe Wilds at the point guard spot is probably, at the shooting guard spot, it's probably not the long-term solution. So I think Blake as a potential starting shooting guard probably makes sense in this context. Oh, and do you want to hear about how I got here in the first place?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So I got a call from earlier today that Marvin Del Grande from Forever Aller magazine, he apparently had to drop off from today's broadcast real quickly because he was having some issues, and so I had to. So he called me last minute, and I guess it's good to fill in for a friend. Shout out to Marvin, who's probably listening to this broadcast. He's an amazing guy. And all.
Well, we only have a couple minutes, I think, before San Jose gets their pick in. What are your thoughts, Masterson, on San Jose with some of their big free agents? Obviously, Jazz retiring. How are they going to replace him, free agency, or possibly even the draft here?
I don't know. If we're going for straight pick for pick, they would logically have to pick the next highest center, Rashid Al-Amin, but they could always look for answers in free agency. There's still a couple of good centers out there that they might be able to reach for. Also, I've heard rumors that Mike Rising was approached by the Montana Howlers for a potential deal with them, and given that his father was obviously one of the better players for the Howlers for a long time, I don't know. Maybe they could go for a shooting guard instead. So could be Eric Baltev, I think. He's probably the best shooting guard left at this point.
Your thoughts, Marcus? Mr. Perfect?
Well, it hasn't been big perfect for me so far right now, these past few picks, but it's going to be interesting what they want to do as well. I feel like they are willing to go ahead and go for that reach here. They really don't have a lot of options left, even though, yes, they could go for something in free agency. You have to look at how much money they have available, and they do have to deal with Adam Tavella as well. They have to pick up if they do decide to, even if they do decide to move on from Mike Rising. So they have to make some big choices here, and I think right now it's either trying to go ahead and get one of the potential stars here in the in free agency right now to come in to replace Jazz, and possibly losing Rising or Tavella, or goodness forbid, both. Or just go ahead and um, go for this reach, develop him, and really just kind of throw him to the wolves a little bit, and have him learn on the fly. Sure, that might mean you might have to take a couple of years, um, and of kind of building a little bit to make sure that he plays very well. But that may have to be the best choice for him.
Yeah, I mean, going with a guard here could be a viable choice, especially if they are expecting not to be able to retain Rising. We'll just have to see, as I think the commissioner is heading on stage.
For the 14th pick of the 2020 FBA Draft, the San Jose Thrust have selected Joseph Na, a God Eastern Dragon from SWU. Congratulations to you, Joseph, on being the number 14 pick of the 2020 FBA Draft. I will return for the next pick when the Montana Howlers have confirmed their selection, followed by the Bangor Tides. Thank you.
Well,
We are reaching today. This is
this is not a pick that I was expecting to come at all. The only thing that could have surprised me more was a non-top 24.
Even then, I think that it's an interesting pick. Obviously, this is something that we didn't really expect. But when we're looking at the overall guard depth, there really isn't anyone that you could say is the point guard for the long run either. They do have Christian Asbury for the next few years, but hasn't really been known to be a star. Well, not a starter more so. So that could be the answer for that, and that could possibly be the answer for possibly moving on from Rising, as you alluded to.
Yeah, I mean, Na must have had a really great interview at the combine, I think, because this is definitely kind of a little bit from left field for me. But I think it does signal to Rising that perhaps he will not be being pursued by San Jose. And speaking of Rising, moving on to the next team coming up, Montana. If your sources are correct and Rising ends up going to Montana, how does that impact their draft strategy here tonight?
Hmm. I mean, from the same sources, I've also heard rumors that Ren Inoue is on the trading block. If so, then Rising might not be playing small forward at that stage. He could be playing shooting guard instead of small forward. So maybe they pick a small forward. Maybe they pick I don't know, who's the highest forward left on the draft? It's Ivan Divakovic. He could be very well the pick. I don't know. Although if they are worried about losing Regan St. Croix to another team at the moment, they could also go with Rashid Al-Amin.
Kind of reach down and grab a center. I mean, there's also Viking Lagerstrom available in the top 24. We haven't really seen anyone dive down out of the top 24 yet. Do you think maybe in the next couple picks we might see something like that happen?
I don't know, but I hope so.
You don't need any more drama. You need to get like a caffeine shot and get you going again. This draft has been exhausting for all of us here. We're about an hour and 45 minutes in and on pick 15 here. But Marcus, your thoughts here on Montana? I think our draft boards have both kind of crumbled to an extent.
Yeah, I think at this point we've kind of pretty much alluded to that we got enough points as it is when it comes to early going, but now we're just looking into what these teams can do, and with hearing that the Montana Howlers are willing to move on from Inoue, it's going to be interesting if they want to try and replace it with a young point guard, especially with the rumors of Mike Rising coming in. It's going to be interesting how they want to put him in along with Cresta. I do think that if they decide to do that, he has no choice but to move into the small forward slot and possibly have a younger player come in to be the starting point guard. So with that in mind, I might be tooting the same horn again, but I think possibly Tyreek Murphy. This has been one of the players, as well as Eric, that has been slipping a little bit. It's something we expected here in the FBA draft. Not everything is going to be what we expect, so it's going to be interesting if this is where we're going to see one of those two players get picked up here.
I just want to point out to everyone that doesn't have a camera, as Marcus looked at me smugly saying that we can't be perfect, says the guy who has nailed it so far in the draft selection prediction. But I'm going to switch it up. I originally said Boltave here at guard. The fact that they're going after Rising really makes me question that. I think they're going to reach down for Lagerstrom or Al-Amin here, just because even though I think that they will be able to get St. Kwai back, they need depth at that position around her. And, I mean, we're getting to the point now that most of these players are not going to be expected to start right away. So putting them in as depth picks at this point is not necessarily a controversial pick at this point. I mean, these if you think about it, Montana's not going to have another pick again unless they trade up for quite a while. So at this point, unless there's someone who really wowed you, you're going to build your depth at this point. And I think center position's an area that everyone kind of needs, and if they're going to be so stacked at guard, they probably don't need to be considering guard here.
Yeah, that is a fair assumption because of the fact that these with the fact that there's so few big furs within the top 24 in general, you don't want to be in a situation where you may have to rely on going for someone who's not even on the cusp to try and fill those needs. So unless they really find a player that really fits their bill, it could be interesting. But with what Scott has alluded to, with the possibility of maybe a trade involving Inoue opening up that point guard spot, it's still a pretty big possibility that might have to fill that in this draft as well.
And I think I see the draft pick coming in. I think the commissioner is heading to the stage now with pick number 15.
For the number 15 pick of the 2020 FBA draft, the Montana Howlers have selected Tyreek Murphy, a point guard fancy mouse from Fur Bay State. Congratulations to you, Tyreek, on being the number 15 pick of the 2020 FBA draft. I'll return for the next pick when the Bangor Tides have confirmed their selection, followed by the Dakota Bikers. Thank you.
I have to eat crow. I was wrong. I
don't want to say anything to you, Marcus. So
Look at me go.
yeah, except this is not who you picked on your board, so it doesn't count.
Well, I mean, at this point, we've thrown our board out of the window, right?
No, your board's still sitting there underneath your desk. I'm looking at it.
Oh, come on, whatever. It's not really too much of a surprise here with the information that we gotten from Scott. The possibility of them moving on from Ren anyway via trade, probably bringing in Mike Rising. We could have a potential of seeing more of a 3-guard set from Montana with this pick. There really aren't a lot of people on their depth outside of who they just picked up in Tyreek that can really fill in that slot well. So I think this is a really good spot, especially the fact that you got someone who was ranked in the top 10 originally anyways. So yeah, I think this is a good spot for him.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I was gonna say I think the guard position is always a. There's so many in every draft, and you can always find a diamond that slips out. I mean, I always bring up Derek Kim in conversation, just because of the fact that he slid to 11 from the number 1 spot, and that was just because of how stacked the guard class usually is every year that we see players start to slide. So I'm not terribly shocked to see a guard going here. I'm a little disappointed. I think that I'd like to get a few more points. I do want to not avoid paying for your steak dinner, but
Guys, I'm back from my coffee run.
oh god, no, he's back.
Oh boy.
Oh, welcome back.
Well, why don't we dive into Bangor unless you had anything you wanted to say, Walker, about Montana's pick?
Well, they're going to have lots of guards there, apparently. All the guards.
All the guards everywhere.
Oh god, why did we invite you
I don't
on?
know. I'm too happy right now with my coffee.
I'm sure you are, man. I'm sure you are. But speaking of going into being guard happy, let's go ahead and dive into Bangor. And with the announcement with Lance and the situation with that, what do you expect the Bangor Tides to do here?
Well, if you don't mind, I'm going to just kind of divert from that for a moment and say it's really cool that I shouldn't say it's really cool. I want to thank Wildfire for his time with the Bangor Tides and in this league. It's really good in terms of Tides preparation that he was here to announce his intentions going forward in the future, such that they could prepare for replacing him in the future, and this year could serve as a year of mentorship, the Rabbit to the rest of the team. So if you want to draft somebody who would be potentially on that level someday, bring in somebody who could train underneath Wildfire. You could look at those positions and say, well, there's plenty of guards again in this draft to talk about. Could be Baltaev.
Could be
That's what I
Baltaev, could be Wilson, could be Aquino. There's still a decent number of high-profile guards on the top 24 right now. I'd say it could be any one of them.
I think really the question is who do you think will have an easier time trying to learn behind Lance? Because, we know that Lance definitely can hold his own scoring wise, but he is definitely more so known for his passing ability as well. And so they need to be able to find that key general of the future. So that can be something they can look forward to as well.
Yeah, well, the question also goes back to the deciding who to go with potentially in free agency. If there's any point guards out there that they consider maybe a little bit more developed than any of the potential draftees at this point at number 16, if they think there's a better potential in the market, or like you said, is there a point guard here that they really think has an opportunity that can mature quickly within a single year to replace Lance?
If we were looking beyond Baltaev, I would be opted to say Neo Snyman. It'd be a perfect fit for the Bangor Tides. Somebody who could play either the point guard or shooting guard position, who has some flexibility there. And I do believe he's a little bit more apt to pass. So he has a similar play style to Wildfire. Bangor could be the perfect place for Snyman to go in this draft. So that's going to be my pick.
So I kind of have a quick question. Do you think that Tia Terra is going to move to center for next year's Bangor starting lineup? Because
it's possible.
Because they haven't really shown signs that they want Raul Kadane back yet.
Well, considering how much Kadane cost them previously, I don't know if they think that they can get him at a discount. I'd imagine Tiatera would become the more heavily paid player based off her performance the last couple seasons, and she only has 1 year left on her deal. So financially, they might just have to consider whether or not Kadane is a viable player here, and that might in fact impact how they draft if they go after a center here just for backup purposes.
Yeah, it's a possibility. I think for me though, I may have to go with Austin Wilson personally because he does transition really into being able to be a very significant passer. The only question really when it comes to him is just how well can he handle being able to shoot on the perimeter if he's asked, because he's not really known to be a perimeter guy. He's not known to be someone who relies on the three as much. He's more of a driver. But even in with that case, we do have Lance who has the chance to try and really coach him up while on the court. So possibly going under that route would be an interesting choice as well.
Yeah, and I think the pick is in now, heading up to Sage.
For the number 16 pick of the 2020 FBA Draft, the Bengal Tides have selected Ivan Divakovic, a small forward. Balkan Kamoy from Universidad Cesara e Serbia, Belgrade. Congratulations to you, Ivan, on being the number 16 pick of the 2020 FBA Draft. I shall return when the next pick is selected by the Dakota Bikers, followed by the Santa Ana Spectrums. Thank you.
So, we were all talking about guards, and the Weasel general manager decided to slap us with a forward pick out of left field.
Well, I think this leads into your question of Tia Terra. The fact that they drafted a forward here, does that potentially mean that Tia will be sliding over to center and that they want to bolster their forward depth? I think they're going to try and bring back Desi, but I could imagine that there's not a lot behind her that they have prepared to take over, either if she leaves or if she gets injured at any point.
Well, the interesting about this one is that Ivan doesn't really seem to be more of a power forward type player. Ivan is more so being able to be good at the 3 point more so than anything else, and is not really known for rebounding. So this is a very particular choice. I have questions of whether now I'm raising questions of whether or not they want to bring back Randy because of the fact that he is heading into free agency, and I don't think they have too much money into their cap this year. Well, they do have 36, but they do have to answer a few questions when it comes to who they want to bring in and fill in those slots when it comes to free agency. So it's interesting what they want to do here with this pick. It's a little bit surprising for me.
I think Bangor surprises us every year at their pick, whether they do some silly trade that breaks the draft to, picking a player that no one expects. I think going back all the way to 2015, questions have been raised on their selections with even like Mackenbach. People were questioning that pick.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be a wait and see of how well this is going to work for this team. Certainly, now I kind of question of if they're going to decide to actually go into the free agency pool and try and get a point guard there and actually be a player that could be a really big spark for them for the first year, and then actually fill in for that starting role in their second year.
Yeah,
the Divakovic is definitely, I agree with Baylor, number 3 position a player, and that would probably infer that Terra is moving over to number 5. So the future of Mackenbach is just up in the air at this point. I would hate to see him go. I think he's been one of the mainstays of that team that helps them kind of balance things out. But if they had to replace him, then, here's one option. Otherwise, they were looking further down the scoreboard. This might have just been, scoreboard, draft board. This might have just been one of those best forward available type choices.
Yeah, and we don't even know if this is maybe even going a bit further, trying to add to their depth with some three-point shooting off the bench. I mean, obviously, I mentioned earlier, we're starting to get to the point now where these picks, they're not really expected to be starters day one here, just unless there's a team that really has a massive hole in their lineup.
Right. I think that's an excellent point. I think we sometimes look at these players as potential starters rather than starters. And what happens at that point is if you're a potential starter, so many things can change between the time you're actually starting for a team and now. And of course, each team is different. So whether or not they actually need you to start or they need you to be the best bench player that we've ever seen, that doesn't come up until we've been a couple months into the season. So I think a lot of these teams now are looking at the character of the player, whether or not they have the mentality that the team shares, and whether or not they feel confident that player will be successful with their organization. And so, again, I guess I'm hired to speculate.
Yeah.
And,
Well, I was gonna say we're running out of time here for Dakota even on the board. So
so let's talk a little bit about Dakota. I imagine for them, we talk about bench depth. And for me, that means we can kind of go wherever we want with that. Though I imagine they would be also equally interested in fulfilling some of that forward depth that has been, especially when we talk to like Matthew Silvius. It's essential that they have somebody who can fill in multiple positions. So that's where I'm thinking at the point where they might go for Benjamin Aquino at this.
So you're thinking Aquino. I'm still thinking Baltaev. I think that Baltaev is a very, very good guard that can play shotgun to Sylvius as a potential shooting guard.
Oh, no doubt.
Role. Yeah.
No doubt, because the idea again with Dakota is that looking to fill bench depth, in my opinion, that they're going to try their hardest to retain whoever they can from free agency and leaving the team. And of course, the Bikers being one of the more prestigious teams in the recent 10 years of this league, they've got the potential there to retain that position by drafting the best available player on the board, which would be Baltaev at this point.
Yeah, well,
and I also think that there's not a lot of guards on the Dakota Bikers bench right now that's under contract.
Yeah, well, we'll just have to see as the commissioner takes the stage.
For the 17th pick of the 2020 FBA Draft, the Dakota Bikers have selected Neo Snyman, a god meerkat from Great Lakes Mammalia. Congratulations to you, Neo, on being the number 17 pick of the 2020 FBA Draft. I shall return momentarily when the next pick by the Santa Ana Spectrums has been confirmed, followed by the Williamsburg Minutemen. Thank you.
So, are we going to be confused if Lawyer comes back and now there's two meerkats on the team?
For
God.
sure. I guess we possibly have a little brother in for honestly, we both of us had picked this during our mock draft, Eastman, because of the fact that the possibility with trying to get someone who could fill in that slot just in case if Sylvius or Lawyer ends up biting the dust a little bit and missing quite a few games. They do need to have someone who can be able to fill in that role just as quickly as well. And I think Neo Snyman is a good choice, mainly because of the fact that even though he's not the most offensive player, he knows how to pass. He knows how to pass well. And I think that the big concern really is the fact that Sylvius has more injury-prone history out of the two.
Yeah, and on both of our boards, I think actually the only one, Aquino, you had falling a bit later, but I had both Aquino and Baltaev off my board at this point. So the fact that they were still available and they decided not to go with them, I wonder if, I mean, they were all kind of ranked similarly, so it's not like this was a huge reach, but they definitely did not go with the top 24 best available, which is interesting. But I think going guard is not a surprise to anyone considering that they only have one guard under contract going into next season.
For sure.
Yeah, the idea that Snyman was going to be in this mid-range of picks, I don't think anybody would have disagreed with that. But going to Dakota is an interesting. It's kind of like it's the other swing fur that we could have talked about in terms that he's a point guard primarily, but could be moved to the 2 position if necessary. And that's flexibility again is I think what Dakota was looking for, especially as you mentioned, Ryan, that they are going into next season with only one guard on contract.
Speaking of which,
I want to dive into.
Altavs is falling a lot this draft right now. I don't really want to get the players stressed right now, but Shay's the previous huge drops from previous drafts. I don't know.
Yeah, it's unfortunate for Baltaev. I don't think he was looking at seeing himself fall to this point now. That's where we're at, and it's our job to discuss what that means. So it's a good segue, I guess, into the next pick on the board, which is, if my records are correct, which I'm not looking at the board right now.
It's Santa Ana.
Santa Ana.
Would Baltaev be a good fit for Santa Ana?
Well, we got to remember they got rid of a certain player up to Seattle, their backup guard in Zoe Wilds. So I would not be surprised if they went guard here, and Baltaev could be the selection that they need here. Something to keep in mind as we get further and further down the draft. Most of these teams are actually better teams than the lottery teams. So a player going late might have a better chance of being on a team that is had more success recently.
Yeah. After deciding to trade away Zoe Wilds for JC Gold, pretty much swapping shooting guard starters there, and also trading away Vandella, who was their primary 6th for over to Tennessee. I think it's pretty clear that they need to go ahead and go for guard depth here, especially now that they do have someone who has really fallen into their lap. I would be really shocked if they didn't just say, you know what, bump it, best player available, who was the 10th best, all the way down to 18 to our laps. Let's go ahead and have and try and rebuild our guard depth into what we want to strengthen. Now that the fact that they have decided to move on from their coaching staff and their their front office staff previously, they have a chance to try and once again retool and possibly even rebuild to try and make it to that next level.
Also have Austin Wilson, who's of the potential prospects of guard that could go. I would be kind of surprised if they didn't go with Baltaev here, or Aquino. I think those are the number 1 and number 2 best available guards at the moment.
And Masterson, your thoughts here at 17 or 18? Sorry.
I don't really have much to say. Like, you guys already said a lot of stuff about how a guard would be ideal for the Santa Ana Spectrums to get.
That's why you need
However,
a coffee
if they're going for a reach, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if they're going for a reach and getting a forward or center.
sliding you a coffee. Drink the coffee.
Okay, coffee.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, speaking of, while you go get your coffee, bringing on stage the pick, the commissioner, Livingston.
For the number 18 pick of the 2020 FBA Draft, the Santa Ana Spectrums have selected Benjamin Aquino, a guard Barbados Black Belly from Baltimore Bay. Congratulations to you, Benjamin, on being the number 18 pick of the 2020 FBA Draft. I will return once the Williamsburg Minutemen have selected their pick, followed by the Winnipeg Voyagers. Thank you.
Well, another half point to the raccoon.
Yeah. I'm a little bit.
Oh
It's
my
not
god.
too much of a surprise that they went for a guard, but this is once again alluding to that they're going for a more different era instead of going for a player who is more uh, reliable on being a perimeter shooter. They're looking for someone who can really drive more so than anything else, being able to draw contact. And Benjamin Aquino with this pick.
There's I only brought it up kind of as a second choice behind Balteev. Now we're going to have to really talk about extensively, I think, because of the idea that he's continuing to fall in this draft. But as for Aquino is concerned, I like him for the same reasons that I liked Dakota picking Neo Snyman. That you have a couple of guards here in the mid-range of picks that would be able to transition easily on a bench situation between either the point guard or shooting guard position. Aquino has a very forward-thinking attitude, which, again, I kind of touched on earlier. Some of these picks, it comes down to just your attitude, whether or not you've got any baggage that we don't know about. There's all sorts of things that go into these picks now. And with these teams having such already filled out rosters, or at least having a really good plan going forward to keep their, position towards the top of the standings, they can afford to go with some of these players that have shown maybe through combine results that they fulfill a certain need that was lacking in that team prior season.
Yeah, and again, not surprised they went with guard here, especially after the Wild trade. I think Baltave, someone's going to pick him. He is falling into someone's lap. Moving on to the next team, I don't think it's Williamsburg, though, that will go with him. Williamsburg is that team that, everyone seems to play for. Like, they keep the same team going year after year after year, which is a good and bad thing in the sense that the players really get to develop to their best level, but finding a starting role on Williamsburg is a long journey.
Yeah, and I would say one thing that's interesting about Williamsburg right now is they are trying to make a run for St. Croix center, which means they are potentially looking for somebody to fill the number 5 role on that roster. And if they were to fail to get St. Croix or succeed at getting St. Croix, would that mean that they would again have you go for a bench depth, or you look for somebody else who could be the number 5 position? That's a question that I want to poise out there. Would you look for a center here, Williamsburg, who could, at the very least fulfill a bench role, or at least start in a bench role and look, forward to starting in the future, or do you just pick somebody who you see potential in?
Okay, before we
Um,
even, oh, sorry, I
No
was gonna
worries.
say before we even get into that conversation, can we just make a petition to just change the name to Minute Women if that's the case?
Oh my god.
But jokes aside, uh, it's very interesting because of the fact of their situation. Michaela Marley is a free agent right now, and as we've alluded to earlier with Eastman, she has felt that she has had that feeling of having to play the waiting game for a very, very long time up until this year. And right now it's going to be interesting because of the fact that they have Crystal Davis locked up for another 4 years. They have Vera Latiera locked up for another 4 years. They don't necessarily really need her because those two have played in those positions for a very long time. But it's just alluding to, do they have what it takes to bring Michaela Marley back? I don't think they need to go. They're going to go for a guard here. They could possibly look into the forward position because they don't really have too many forward center players outside of Renee Fiora and Chantel Magnano.
So I'm torn. I think that getting the best center remaining on the board would be generally wise. Rashid Al-Amin. However, when a top 10 draft pick is still remaining on the board, maybe it could be best to add some more guard depth, especially when the Minutemen don't seem to be moving for one of their backup guards in Marcelo Oliveira.
We talked about that with Santa Ana, and the end result was they went with Aquino instead of Baltaev. So I'm certain that Williamsburg is looking at this situation going, okay, what do we have to weigh against drafting Baltaev the other teams have weighed on and decided not to go for, versus do we fulfill that need that we have at forward in the event that one of our two starters doesn't return to our team, and in the event that Oliveira, even if she were not to return, we have an ability to bring another guard from free agency. I think the answer is yes. So to me, there's a lot of potential here to draft Baltaev. I'm not saying that you're any more wrong, but we've been wrong for like 10 picks now. And
Do we just
Yeah,
stop
right.
mentioning
We'll
the
probably say Baltaev forever until he gets drafted.
sounds like a plan.
name, unless we've been jinxing the whole way? But I think we'll find out as the commissioners heads to the stage.
For the number 19 pick of the 2020 FBA Draft, the Williamsburg Minutemen have selected Rashid Al-Amin, a center Barbary Lion from Portsmouth, Hampshire University. Congratulations to you, Rashid, on being the number 19 pick of the 2020 FBA Draft. I will return for the next pick when the Winnipeg Voyagers have confirmed their selection, followed by the Biloxi Voodoo. Thank you.
Interesting safety pick, going for the best rated center. I think someone was mentioning that as a possibility here.
Was Mr. Masterson. Scott gets a point.
Oh, so we're just adding everybody into this?
Well, I was
into
gonna
this
say
bet
you want to
now?
be careful because I think if Scott ends up overtaking you, Walker, you're gonna be buying 3 dinners.
Oh,
Oh my
now
god.
I'm buying dinner.
Yes, this is exactly what this is all about, right?
Huh.
But anyways, we obviously landed on. They landed on Al-Amin. I think Masterson definitely touched on it that their center position is getting older, and they need to have some backup there just in case, even if they end up not getting St. Croix. I think that she is a hopeful player that they're going after, not necessarily someone they realistically think they're going to be able to steal away from Montana. So I don't blame them for going for depth here. Any thoughts before we move on to the Voyagers and their predicament?
Nothing really. I mean, honestly, I don't think there really is a situation where you could go wrong here with Williamsburg because of the fact that they do have quite a lot of players within their depth that can easily start at some point in the near future. And while yes, they are going to be getting older, and there are certainly a few players that might be on their last stretch of their contracts, going for somebody who could possibly fill in that slot as soon as they decide to hang up their jerseys for the final time for Williamsburg could be a great choice because they need to get younger anyways.
I have a whole lot more to add because I'm excited to talk about the craziness that is Winnipeg.
Yeah, Winnipeg.
The team that needs
got
everything.
things to work with this season.
So here is my statement for Winnipeg. I want everyone to listen. Baltaev, 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 Baltaev.
Look, you didn't join me with Kokinos earlier, but you don't get to do that here late.
Ah.
Best
Okay.
that I didn't join earlier this draft and joined you in Coquinos, because me saying Voltaire right now, I don't know. Maybe that's the reason. Oh no.
So
What have I
say that-
done?
Yep.
I say this because Winnipeg is by far got one of the most open slate teams. It's a really exciting time to be a fan of Winnipeg. They just reintroduced themselves. They kind of rebranded they've got a new logo and design, but they're remaining, the same team. But what you're going to see, I think, this upcoming season is a lot of different faces at the starting lineup. That's why I would be surprised even if they were able to land. I know this is what you guys are thinking about. If they were to land Carbonneau and Malka back, their starting lineup, you still have 3 other positions that I'm not so sure about.
Kusick got traded for, remember?
And one of those is guard.
At
Still.
point guard, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Is
that's why
Voltaire a point guard?
He is a guard. He does prefer point guard. But I want to delve into Winnipeg attempting to do what Dakota, Plymouth, and Seattle have done the past couple seasons. And, I mean, Dakota won a ring, Plymouth won a ring, Seattle only is 1 year into their rebuild. We have seen good success with a complete blow-up and rebuild. I have to worry eventually it's going to not work out for a team.
The only reason it would not work out for a team is whether you tried to go for a particular player or two, expecting results that didn't end up turning out and you didn't have a plan B. And I'm not terribly worried that Winnipeg is thinking only on plan A and not plan B. If that's what you're thinking about for your starting lineup, then fine. But then you need to get somebody in the backup lane, and you give that position to somebody who is proven to be, a top tier performer. And we have one player on the board right now who we expected to go higher, who would be a great answer to that expectation. I'd be really astonished if Baltev continued to fall past Winnipeg here.
Well, I'm going to throw something in for history's sake. 5 years ago, Winnipeg selected the player that was falling 10 spots in Derek Kim. They got a little burned with the fact that he left after his contract. But history, if you are correct, history could be repeating itself with another point guard falling potentially 10 spots to their lap once again. And
Do you think Winnipeg might be hoping that Voltaire could win Rookie of the Year as well?
I mean, we're talking about the 20th pick here, not the 11th. I think it would be a surprise. I mean,
we've seen crazier.
We have seen crazier. We've seen a 22 pick win Rookie of the Year with Kadane.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I see the pick is in, and he is coming to the stage now.
For the number 20 pick of the 2020 FBA Draft, the Winnipeg Voyagers have selected Eric Baltev, point guard Tufted Puffin from Arsk, Russia. Congratulations to you, Eric, on being the number 20 pick of the 2020 FBA Draft. It's rather fun to say. I will return for the next pick when the Biloxi Voodoo have confirmed their selection, followed by the Plymouth Taproots. Thank you.
Finally!
All right. The fear is now over for Eric Baltev, and now we have seen history repeat itself to this point. It'll be interesting what they're going to do here now that they kind of have gotten their young for the future. This is going to be interesting what they're going to do for the rest of their roster.
They got a top 10 player at 20. I mean, what is there to be mad about during a rebuild when you're able to trade down from 13 and still get a top 10 player?
Yeah,
Agreed.
That was pretty smart from Winnipeg, I think.
Yeah, well, Master, any last thoughts before you head out?
I hope that we see at least one reach in these last 4 picks because, a draft with all top 24s technically makes sense, would be very boring.
It's almost never happened. I mean,
Yeah,
It's very rare.
it's an extreme rarity, so things could probably change as we get into the next pick.
yeah, well, thank you for joining us, Scott. I hope to see you again. Maybe not next round if you're unable to make it, but definitely some point this season, possibly with a broadcast.
I hope so too. It was nice being here. Thanks, guys.
No problem.
Take care,
Make sure you take Walker's coffee on the way out, please. I don't need him getting hyper again.
Oh, you
Yeah, I'll
ruined
totally
it
take that
for
coffee.
Oh, we need you to make it a couple more picks without, dying of caffeine overdose.
I don't die.
Well, we will see you later. Thank you again, and we will move on to, unless either of you had any thoughts about your Baltave chant finally working.
Well, I hope I wasn't easily influencing the pick. The imagination, runs wild. I think again that makes sense for Winnipeg, and I do agree that the next 4 picks are going to be very interesting. Do we see our first non-top 24 pick coming out of these next 4? It could be possible. I would say for Winnipeg, Baltayev was a smart move.
Yeah, there's nothing really much else to say. You got a player that was in the top 10, ranked number 10, dropped 10 spots. While it is unfortunate for the player, it could be a blessing in disguise, especially with the fact that you have a team that's pretty much has it a completely a clean slate with clearing out a lot of contracts the previous year. So right now, it's really going to the ballpark of what you're going to do to help lead the Voyagers into this new path with a whole new sense of rebranding.
Yeah, well, moving on to Biloxi. Oh boy, a team that is facing some interesting questions. They did a sign and trade with Plymouth for
Feckle went to Plymouth. In response, they sent
River.
Michael River, yes.
Michael River. It was more or less just kind of a trading tad for tad situation. But I think Lee Evans being out of contract now might have been why they went ahead with this one for Biloxi's sake. So, I don't know how River will pan out, but they must have some faith in him being able to start right away. So I don't know whether or not forward is what they would be looking for with this pick. If they would look elsewhere for somebody, be a big who could come in and with some short contract be able to just contribute background. I think they're pretty settled on guard. The only questions will be if Kim comes back to the team. I haven't worried too much about Biloxi's guard situation for a few years now. I think they've had that on the lockdown. If they haven't prepared for it up to this point, I would eat my own hat. Let's go with that.
Well, the concern I think might be regarding the with Andreas with a 1-year deal left. If they do fail to get Kim back, obviously I think he moves over to point guard, but what if they lose him as well? So I do agree. I think guard depth at the best here. I think if Baltave had slipped to this far, Baltave would have been selected, but we can stop talking about him. So I do think guard is what they end up going with, and the question is, okay, well, who's the best left on the board at this point? And there's not a terrible number of them. We lost Na already, so you got Wilson and Foster, I believe, are the 2 left.
Yep.
Wilson, we have Foster. They could also reach out of the top 24 and go for somebody like Guillaume Fortier
Or Henderson, even.
Yeah, and this is the perfect spot for you to look into the on the Cups players now because of the fact that there aren't really a lot of options left within the pool now when it comes to the top 24 in this case. and it could be one of those options where like I want to go for a specific spot, but I don't know if we have enough to really have in this certain crop in the top 24. They haven't really shown anything that'll help my specific team. But I don't think that'll be the case here. I do think they will go for Austin Wilson, maybe because of the fact that, as I alluded to during our mock draft, I I'm not really sure if they're gonna bring back Kim, especially with the fact that with the rumors of how they're going to of what they offered him so far has been very unimpressive to me personally, and I'm
Those
sure
rumors,
he doesn't want to take that a potential pay cut in order to continue on what's essentially a whole new look when it comes to this team.
Well,
those rumors have been vicious too.
well, I was gonna say, my contacts have updated me that they've pulled their offers on Terry and have bet hard on Kim as well. But as the commissioner heads on the stage, we can see where they decide to go here.
All right.
For the 21st pick of the 2020 FBA Draft, the Biloxi Voodoo have selected Hayden Foster, a guard fox from FUSC. Congratulations to you, Hayden, on being the number 21 pick of the 2020 FBA Draft. I shall return in a bit when the Plymouth Taproots have confirmed their selection, followed by the Santa Ana Spectrums. Thank you.
Well,
That's
they
a good
went
point.
guard.
That they did.
It's just not
Hayden
the,
Foster.
yeah, the 24th ranked top 24 player. I mean, I don't want to call it a reach because it's only 3 ranks off of what what they were, but I'm a little surprised Wilson wasn't considered, even though Marcus, you did suggest Wilson will not go in the top 24 this year in your mock draft.
Yeah, I did. It's not too big of a I think that when it comes to the guard, Aaron Foster, not a big surprise, not too much of a big surprise because, as I said, I think they have to go guard no matter what, especially with how they have been set up for a while. So I think right now, when it comes down to it, Hayden does have a lot of variety to his name as well, being a very good shooter and a very excellent passer as well. So having to go with, I guess, a semi reach, I guess, not really, but
I struggle to even call it a reach when you're ranked number 24. A reach to
Yeah.
me is reaching out of the top 24 when you're at this point in the draft.
And yet
For
no
me,
one has. What's going on here tonight?
there's I think it's a solid. Well, maybe that's just because we're so good at picking the top.
I mean, you're right on that regard.
So I wasn't part of that process as a FSPN reporter, but the matter is that the idea of going with Foster here is not that far-fetched. I think
It
Foster actually fills that Eastman was pointing to, which was in the event that something happens at the guard position in the next couple years, will Foster potentially be somebody who could fulfill a role, at least as a bench starter? I think very much so, yes. Now, the question would be, obviously, would another player fill that role? But I've been asking that question all night long, and I think for these guards that we've seen being picked, it's come down to, again, what does the team see in the player? How do they feel about camaraderie with the rest of the team? Do they have a good interview or draft combine? And if I recall correctly, Foster didn't necessarily have the best combine. So you could talk about that a little bit. But I don't disagree with their pick here. Other than the fact that I had alluded to, they might go with someone in the as a forward backup. I kind of started to understand why Eastman, and going with the guard would make more sense.
Yeah, well, jumping on over to our reigning champions, they've already made a move to acquire Feckle, which meant they gave up River. That leaves a giant question here at power forward. How do we move forward here Plymouth. With this draft, do we think that they're going to go with someone like Viking Lagerstrom, or perhaps even reach in a little deeper into the draft pool to find a power forward? Because they have a point guard in Kinney. I'm assuming they're going to go after Trevor. They have a small forward locked down in Feckle. And if anyone replaces Jake, I will not only eat your hat, but my hat.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, I do imagine them wanting to go for either Trevor, or if they want to go for a little bit of a discount, go for Yasina as well. I wouldn't be surprised if they decide to go for Viking, because of the fact that he is a he fills a position of need. Sure, it's going to be a bit of a question of how well he's going to develop, especially being thrown into the Wolves and having to deal with that high expectation. Because that's another thing we have to put into consideration as well. Can some of these players who are being picked around this area, who has to fill a position of need, can they handle that pressure? I mean, sure, they could have a possibility of going into free agency to go for someone who they know can handle that pressure, but they don't have a lot of money either. And they may have to give up on they may have to give up on going after Trevor Cruz as well if they go for that route. So it just really comes to question is, can this player handle the big stage? And in the combine games, Viking has done very well.
This is our reigning champ team. I think that's obvious. So I can't imagine that anything beyond trying to get somebody who doesn't get a big head, let's say, going to a team that has a lot of high expectations around them for a second, repeat opportunity at a championship. Somebody that presents themselves in a confident and collected manner might be what ends up being the ultimate decision maker here. And I'm looking too at the cusp of players that are available, and there are a lot of players available at the forward position that they could choose from, as well as center. It's actually really quite awesome that their pick is this late in the first round, because they have quite a few people that they could go to for this. We could see Christina Ackerman getting drafted as a backup for Jake. We could see someone like Paige Lynn, or perhaps, we mentioned Lagerstrom, and that's not a terrible decision either, because, Taproots and Lager go hand in hand.
Well, we will see as I see the commissioner getting handed the pick and heading to the stage.
For the number 22 pick of the 2020 FBA Draft, the Plymouth Taproots have selected Laurent Pathrun, a small forward Kuvaz dog from Tatabánya, Hungary. Congratulations to you, Laurent, on being the number 22 pick of the 2020 FBA Draft. Once the Senate Spectrums have confirmed their selection, I will return, followed by the last pick by the Albany Alphas. Thank you.
Well, they went forward, but not the forward I was expecting. And Pathrun was the player that I kind of questioned where he would fit on a team. He is. We talked a little about Divakovic being more of a 3 spot, but at least with his height of 6'9", he could slide over to power forward at times. Whereas Pathrun is only 6'5", and he almost seems locked in at the small forward position. I don't think most teams could see him sliding into that 4 spot and being effective on defense. So potentially this is a depth pick for them to back up Feckle.
They must have traded River for Feckle for a reason. Perhaps one of those reasons is that they weren't necessarily confident in the number 3 position. So pick somebody else might create a little bit of a kind of small competition there at that position, that makes Feckle even more of a driven player and improves her play to try and keep Catherine down in the bench. Now, I know that's kind of a silly methodology to think about for a draft. In terms of Pethrun starting right away, I don't know if he's particularly ready, but he's perhaps definitely, going back to what I was saying, a good pick if you're looking for someone who has that calm and collected confidence that is necessary for a championship team. He's been one of the calmest players in this top 24, in my opinion.
Even then, I do have to question it because of the fact that it doesn't really answer any of your major questions coming into free agency. You still have the worry of who you want to plug into that 4 spot, because we all know that Pathrum is not going to be the choice for that slot unless they really want to go for broke and go small and move Tanya over there.
Oh, Lord. I mean, small with the biggest center possible.
Oh, geez. But yeah, I think that really, when it comes down to it, it seems that they are willing to try and answer that in free agency as well when it comes to that power forward slot. Now, that does come into the question with their shooting guard position as well, because as I alluded to, if they decide to go for that to fill the power forward slot through the draft, they may have to say goodbye to Trevor Cruz, and that goes into your prediction, Eastman, about losing both River and Trevor,
Yep.
which could be a really big shock to the system and Plymouth in its entirety. Now, they can't bring in Yasina to fill in that slot, but I would even have to say that it might be a little bit of a downgrade when it comes to the Roots with this choice.
Yeah, well, I think we need to move on to SAS. They have a little under 3 minutes left on the clock, and they traded back into the top 24 with Dakota getting the 23rd overall pick. Any thoughts on what they may have predicted would still be on the board here that interested them to come back into the top 24?
I would have to say forward depth, in all honesty. I know that we've talked about this a little bit in our mock draft with when it comes to the concerns of Lee Jin-sung. He's going to be on his final year of his contract. He could be looking for more money since he has held his own in Santa Ana and taken over that small forward spot. So you could argue that they could possibly fill in somebody who can both fill in that forward depth, which they'll need the depth in general, considering who's on the contract right now, but possibly have an opportunity to move someone into that small forward position just in case Lee decides to decide to leave from Santa Ana.
And at that point, I think the best person on the board available at the moment is Janine Henderson. But I could also see that this being the first reach out of the top 24. If not, and we're looking at a potential situation where all top 24 picks are being drafted this year, which would be astronomically rare.
We'll draft in the first round.
Yeah, and so there are several other available small forwards and power forwards available on the cusp. So I think by picking the guard of Benjamin Aquino earlier, that we're looking at a situation where they would pick depth or now a forward position. And I don't know necessarily what Lee Jin-sung's plans are after his contract is up. I know that's something that you touched on, Marcus. The idea that he's got ulterior motives too. At this stage of his career seems a little bit interesting to talk about on the road. I'm trying to understand what their status is now for this season and why they would need to have specifically somebody to fulfill his role in the future. I'd have a hard time doing that.
I think it might come down to how much a new contract will cost for him. I think they got very lucky with the last contract they got out of him, because if I remember correctly, he only was on a 1-year deal before being signed with SAS the first time.
And
And
it was
Okay.
a very cheap deal as well.
the second, I think he actually was a free agent 2 times since then. I can't exactly remember, but I think it's a team friendly deal at the moment. And should he receive significant offers next free agency, I'm looking at the next free agency. I'm not seeing a huge bastion of names, and maybe it will take the 2019 draftees stepping up this year to make next free agency as exciting as this one. But I think Santa Ana has their pick in, and it's getting taken to the stage now.
For the number 23 pick of the 2020 FBA Draft, the Santa Ana Spectrums have selected Viking Lagerstrom, a power forward center European Badger from Stellarholmen, Sweden. Congratulations to you, Viking, on being the 23rd pick of the 2020 FBA Draft. I shall return shortly when the Albany Alphas have confirmed the final selection for the night. Thank you.
Well, he gets the steak tonight, apparently. We were quite far off, but I also think that may be play into the other free agent I believe Santa Ana will have to worry about next season, which is the Otter, Tyrese Vaughn,
Yes.
I mean, we've seen this free agency, some battles for Sankoy and Volkov, and I could imagine next season will be a similar bet for the Otter. That it will be a bit of a bidding war, even, and it might be a good idea to have a fallback plan just in case.
Yep. And what a better person to really come in and really fill in uh, that primary backup when it comes to the forward position than Viking. I mean, we've seen how well he has done within the combine game. He really held his own when it came to really guarding in the paint and really getting those much important rebounds, especially offensively. I think that this is something that Santa Ana you can't really go wrong with, and it's something that you can really allude to with having to be able to get the final big fur within the top 24 at this juncture, which I think a lot of people really assumed that Viking would be picked up a lot earlier, considering how little that we have so far when it comes to the bigs.
Now that Lagerstrom has found a home, I have to mention that there's one player left in the top 24, and we're on the last pick of this round. That's Austin Wilson. Does Austin go to Albany?
That's a really good question. I mean, I think it really depends on what their depth really looks like so far. They do have quite a few guards on their roster anyway right now.
They just signed Callum Williamson at 5. They don't
Yeah.
need another
Yeah.
guard.
I don't think I don't think they really need another guard at this point. So
Also,
honestly,
interestingly, sorry, Marcus, they also interestingly have the number 26 pick. So they'll be picking early again tomorrow.
yeah, so they have a lot of chance to get a very young core in here. So I honestly think that unfortunately I do think they'll look into the on the cusp. I think possibly Janine Henderson could possibly be an option, or even one of the big fairs like Faritu. I hope I'm saying this right. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Faritu could be a possible option for them since they don't really have really a good answer for the center position either. So possibly going for a more forward favorite or even a centered favorite for would probably be the best option for them.
There's also Oscar Johansson, who I think is on the cusp, or at least was in the contention for top 24 at one point. A big dog. He would be able to get into Albany Alpha's team, I guess, pretty quickly. That's a potential choice there if they're looking for depth. The other center or forward that I would like to mention just before we get this final pick is Christina Ackerman. I do think that's a little bit further down the board of a reach. She could be a potential candidate for Albany should they go that route.
Yeah, I would be. I mean, beside for the record-setting, all 24 going in the first 24, I don't think the teams are going to cooperate with our little goal. But I do think center is where they want to go in the end, and that has to be on the cusp then. And I do like Ackerman. Even in the non-top 24, I think Ackerman would be a good selection. I like Oscar. Like you said, he's a big dog, 7'5", 327. He could be a big body down low in the post. I think it'd be great to see someone like that picked up here. But the top 24 on the cusp is mostly made up of centers, so take your pick, Albany, please.
Well, Ryan's just wanting to get his next mocha latte cappuccino at the bar.
No, I gotta sleep. I mean,
Yeah?
I agree. It's not that
We got
late
another
yet.
round to do tomorrow.
I know it's not that late yet, but I gotta go home and rest the voice. I need tea, not a mocha latte, caffeine
Sorry,
injection.
I will
don't know
say,
what that word is. I don't quite understand your accent.
You know what?
I will say, just before the round is over, depending how this goes, I was right about having possibly only one person on the cusp to be coming into the getting picked to the top 24, and it will be picked at 24. So I will count that as a moral victory.
I think I'm gonna need alcohol, not tea. Actually, why are we sharing a room, Marcus? Again?
We should. I think we should tape Marcus's muzzle to the desk. And just
I
leave
think
it
it's
there.
good that I have a spare key to the room. So,
Anyways, I think Alaska has their pick in.
All right. In Albany, though.
All Albany, Alaska. Maybe I've already hit the bottle.
All right, here we go.
I don't believe you. Really, no. This is it. This is the only one. You're sure? There's nothing over on the table over there. There's nothing behind your back. This is it. You're positive. All right. You're fired if it's not. Excuse me. For the 24th pick and the last pick of the evening of the first round of the 2020 FBA draft, the Albany Alphas have selected Oscar Johansson, center forward St. Bernard from Chicago Bay. Congratulations to you, Oscar, on being the number 24 pick of the 2020 FBA draft. And congratulations to all of the young athletes this evening who have been selected so far. We look forward to seeing the rest of you tomorrow evening for round 2 of the 2020 FBA draft. And we appreciate, a shenanigan-free first evening. I wish all of the remaining draftees the best of luck for tomorrow. And once again, congratulations to all of those who have been picked here in the first round of the draft, excuse me. Otherwise, it is my pleasure to say that for now, the 2020 FBA draft will be concluding and then resuming tomorrow evening. Thank you very much, and have a great evening.
Well, Marcus, don't say a word.
You get a point.
Okay, you know what? I think I got second place, though, so you can buy me a salad. You buy Marcus his steak.
All right.
Or you can buy me a
I don't-
drink. I think I'm going to need 3.
Coffee.
And Vegas is expensive for drinks.
yep. And I'll make sure to pretty much list how I want my steak in the most exact details, so that way we can be able to get everything done. But What a way to conclude here, as Albany is able to get to use their 24th selection for a center in Oscar.
Really like this pick. I think the idea of this guy going to Albany and becoming a big part of their overall picture, and taking somebody who is not necessarily rated in the top 24, giving him a chance here, it's just adding up correctly to me in my mind. And so I'm pretty happy for the Alphas to get this guy before potentially. I mean, they would have had a ability to get him at 26, but now they could look at Austin Wilson at 26 tomorrow, depending on what Edmonton Totems, I believe, are first tomorrow. Am I right on that?
No, I believe it's the Lone Stars once again. Gonna
Yeah,
be for
Lone
the
Stars.
25th.
Totems traded their pick to Albany Alphas. Sorry
Yes.
about that. So the idea there is playing out in my mind, and again, I think Johansson just seems like a really good fit for this team.
Yeah, picking a center here, I think, was a much needed. They probably could have had a center available at 26. There are 3 of them still on the cusp, so at least one of them would have been available there. However, better to grab them while you can, especially if there's one you liked. We didn't really see too much of a reach with the center position like I had expected. I had expected a few centers to creep into the last few picks from the cusp, but it only ended up being one. So I'm definitely excited to see how round 2 goes. It's a much faster affair, 3 minutes per pick, and a lot of players still to get through. We're only halfway done with the draft so far.
Yep, it's exciting. It's an exciting time for us still, even though that there are players that may be a little disappointed about making it into the not making it to the first round. Excuse me. They still have a chance to be drafted in general to possibly prove their worth, saying that they are worth that first round pick. But it all really starts here with that mentality.
And I'll be, just really honest with you. It's been exciting seeing the reactions of the crowd from behind us as each pick comes through. Everybody is on a team together, rooting for each other, and I think even some of the players themselves have gotten into really excited for each other and seeing where they end up going. So it almost ends up like a big group of a big loving community, though at the same time, there are the players too who are looking a little bit snooty at each other. But this is the FBA draft. It's not mock draft or something silly that the reporters come up with to so I can tell that didn't go over too well, but yeah, I've been really happy to see this first round play out. I think a lot of teams have ended up answering questions. I think there's still some teams that have a lot of questions left to be answered, and I'm hoping tomorrow we can provide some clarity on what those questions might be for some of these teams.
Yeah, well, that and we didn't have a single trade during the draft except for the 2 announcements, but I think those were completed before the draft. So if round 2 is anything not like round 1, we'll probably have 50 trades, including that 29th pick that is passed between every team, it seems like.
Well, every draft goes with at least one trade.
Yes.
So it helps Mr. Livingston keep his energy at the end of the day. I can't, maybe they're just trying to be courteous to that guy.
I'm pretty sure, the month before the draft, he's got a treadmill that he has to reach a certain milestone to make sure he can survive the draft days. But
well, then why don't we notice any difference?
Look, you get in between the elephant and the peanut farm factory that he owns. But anyways, I think before we all lose our minds to delirium as the round comes to a close 3 hours in, I'd like to thank everyone tuning in tonight. We will catch you tomorrow, same time for round 2. Thank you, Marcus, and thank you, Walker, for joining.
It's not a problem.
For having me.
Yep, and hopefully we'll see both of you tomorrow. I've been Ryan Eastman. Y'all been wonderful.